concerning wildlife is concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting his front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as a family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. As an Aussie that has been dive bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger, every springtime...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. The day is not great, I have to say. If you're just waking up and you're thinking about getting out of bed and it's Easter holidays and you don't have to because the kids are still asleep as well, I wouldn't bother. It's absolutely battering it down with rain, certainly is in the southeast. You may wish to look out the window before you venture out with any plans that you may have. But all I can say to you that for the next 4 hours we will bring you what can only be described as the greatest entertainment and interesting news show that you've ever seen or heard of in your entire life. Peter Blexley's here, as if, you know, just me being here wasn't enough. We got him as well. We're going to be talking about a great many things, including the fact that Britain is apparently broken. Front page of The Sun. I have it here, ladies and gentlemen. They've done an official study. They've done a survey of people around the country, and they've asked them, do you think Britain is broken? And they have come back with a resounding, yep, absolutely. Nothing works, I'm afraid. The damning poll carried out in Labour's Redwall came after another day of channel crossings and unions rejecting a bid to settle the long-running bin strike in Birmingham. Sir Keir Starmer, who can blame him, has gone off on holiday for a few days, apparently. But what he hasn't done is he has not handed over the reins of power to Angela Rayner. Well, who can blame him? I wouldn't do that either, because God knows what she would get up to while he's away. Nobody's told us where he's gone, and it doesn't really matter. But my guess is he might have gone to Lanzarote. And the reason I think that is because Lanzarote has been hit by some incredible flooding and some really, really awful weather. And you know what Keir Starmer's like. He brings the curse of Keir Starmer with him everywhere he goes. I hope he's not in Lanzarote, and I hope you're not in Lanzarote. But if you are, we'd love to hear from you, because apparently it's really, really bad there. And meanwhile, in Mallorca, where he also might have gone, there's no Guinness. They've run out of Guinness, Peter. Would you believe it? Which is obviously not great for all the British tourists. It is Easter holidays. I keep saying, if you've got children, you're probably going away. Otherwise, things are on the up for China. China is saying to us basically that because of the way that they've been kicked out of the Scunthorpe steel plant, they're now going to wreak revenge on Britain and pull all sorts of jobs out of the economy which we would normally be relying upon them to provide. Well, quite frankly, why are we relying on China to provide anything? I think Donald Trump is right about China. We should be going front and centre against them, and we should not be encouraging them to get into our infrastructure to be part of our economy. It's as simple as that. You know what to do. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch with. We're going to be talking about that terrorist in prison and why there are so many Muslim gangs roaming around. We've got Robert Jenrick coming on the show to talk to us about that a little bit later on. Also, on the water bill front, your water bills are going to rise again. But guess what? We've got a new statistic. It turns out that 3 billion litres of water are lost into the ground. Not every year, not every month, not every week. Every single day, I'm afraid. 0344 499 1000. Also, the Speaker of the House, remember him? Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Long Haul Hoyle. He's now spent £300,000 of our money on more jollies. Absolutely unbelievable. This is Morning Glory. Let us get it on. It does make you wonder when things are going to improve in this country. Peter Blexley, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Governor.
I mean, as if you needed any encouragement to think that people who are in the world of show business are a little bit unhinged from the world. Katy Perry went up to the space yesterday and she spent no more than 4 minutes of intense pleasure up there, came back and talked about how much in love she was with it, how amazing it all was, and she's talking as if she's Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin, you know, landing on the moon, first people planting a flag. She was in space for 4 minutes. She's got longer songs than that.
Who's Katy Perry?
Sorry, my apologies. She used to be married to Russell Brand.
I knew
We're not
that
allowed to talk about him because obviously he's up for some charges that we can't get into at the moment. You know, sub-judice and all that.
Always got a lot to say for himself, though, that fella, hasn't he?
He's not shy, is he?
No.
So she's the ex-missus of Russell Brand. Apart from that, she's a pop singer.
Is she?
Yeah. Would you like to have a look at what she said about going up into the space on the Blue Origin flight?
Only if I must.
All right, you must, I think, because it's the only chink of light that we can have a laugh at, I think, this morning. Have a look.
What you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because you got to trust in yourself on this journey, and then you're feeling the love when you come down, for sure, and you're feeling that strength. So I feel really connected to that strong, divine feminine right now.
God bless her. I mean, listen, you've got to give her the credit of supplying the love to this show. And I mean, never mind about the famine in Africa or, you know, the Gaza war or Ukraine or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just share the love.
Straight out of the Meghan playbook.
Isn't it?
Really.
Isn't it? It's hilarious.
Mean, they're just like carbon copies of each other.
Yeah.
Talking absolute, unmitigated drivel.
Garbage. Absolute garbage. I feel a podcast coming on. In fact, Meghan will probably have him straight in the studio to do her new, you know, podcast. Because what's she now doing? You know, women as architects or something. There's 5 women went up into space, right? Jeff Bezos, the man who paid for it all, sent his wife up, which tells you something about their marriage, doesn't it? I think he was hoping she wouldn't come back. Yeah. Well, obviously we can't say that because that would be wrong. Here's Gayle King, who's the woman who is a mate of Oprah Winfrey's, and I think is also a friend of Meghan's as well. Here's what she had to say about Katy Perry singing in space.
It's very difficult because you're floating, but the best part was when we got back in our seats after 0 G's, Katie sang "What a Wonderful World."
She did?
Isn't that nice?
Oh, come on.
She sang "What a Wonderful World." I see dreams. Oh, yes.
Oh.
Because we'd been asking her to sing all the time, and she wouldn't.
Yeah. It's a complicated life, isn't it? When you've got more money than sense.
I mean,
it's amazing. 4 minutes of absolute intense pleasure. I don't know what I can do to describe it.
The benefits to humanity that we've all gathered from them going up into space for 4 minutes. I mean, we're very fortunate.
I mean, here we are on the brink of discovering a cure for cancer. Yeah. And in some ways, this is more important.
These courageous women have gone up there.
Risking it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Without a thought for themselves.
Yes.
None at all. For the benefit of humanity. Yeah. They've gone up there.
And they're definitely not going to, in any way, sort of, you know, capitalise on it for money or anything.
No, absolutely.
That won't happen.
No, or attention or anything like that. And she's gone up there and quite selflessly destroyed one of Louis Armstrong's greatest songs. Was it Louis Armstrong?
It was, yeah. I see trees of green. Also, you're in space. There are no trees of green. If you're seeing trees of green, you've been dropping too many acid pills, to be honest. Here's another one from Aisha Bow, a NASA engineer.
I just feel a renewed connection to everything in life and where we are, and I can't wait to go back out there and pour what I've learned into the world.
You have given so much to so many, and I know there are a lot of people watching right now, some young boys and some young girls that are inspired constantly by you. What would you like to say to them?
Dream it, plan it, and go and do it. I never really thought I could go to space, although I really wanted to go. And today just confirmed that dreams are real, and sometimes reality is wrong.
Sometimes reality is wrong. I'm not sure that's a good lesson for young women and girls, because you can imagine Keir Starmer going, young women and girls, we're looking up at those people and going, oh, wow, she's a woman. You know, he's on holiday, by the way, not in space, unfortunately.
I must never, ever go to America again, clearly, because if these women are kind of like a sample of what they spout over there, I think eventually, after I've stopped laughing, I'm going to get irritated by it all.
It is an interesting country in many ways. I mean, I've got, of course, as you know, many connections there. My mother lived there for many years. My sister does live there. One of my sons lives there. But nobody's in any doubt about how ridiculous it can sometimes be. When I first went there, and back in the 80s, when I used to meet people, particularly outside of New York, in the sort of boondocks, as you might call them, you know, places like Minneapolis or, you know, Detroit or even Chicago, people would come up to me and go, is it really foggy in London?
Right.
And I'd go, yeah, absolutely, all the time. Can't see the hand, you know, at the end of your arm. And they would believe you, because, you know, they're sort of charmingly naive about things in many ways.
But that one who's actually from NASA, you know, so probably.
I mean, she's a NASA
knowledge.
engineer, and I'm sorry to allege that, you know, she might have been put in there because, one, she was a woman, and two, she was a woman of colour. But she doesn't sound like a scientist to me.
Well, what she did say was she's going to pour what she's learned into the world.
Yeah.
Aren't we lucky?
Right.
4 minutes of learning.
And apparently sometimes reality isn't reality.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a bit worrying for me if you're a scientist.
Dreams do come true, she says. Yeah.
Trees are green. Anyway, the good news is Katy Perry's going to write a song about it all.
Oh, brilliant.
So, you know, I'll let you know when that comes out.
Yeah, because I've never listened to any of her songs previously.
Have you not?
So
it's a shame we can't play any, but we're not allowed to because, you know...
Oh, please don't.
No, I'd like to play you California Girls, which is a great song of hers, but unfortunately we're not allowed to.
A great song of hers. Are you convincing me now that I've got to go and listen to this?
You should listen to it because it will give you a sort of a window into her personality and her songwriting capabilities.
On Tuesday, April the 15th, 2025, do I really need this in my life, Mike?
No.
Right, thank you.
No,
I just needed clarity on that.
You don't have to do it. But I'll tell you what we need to do is talk about the front page of The Sun. Britain is broken. Inside on page 10, we're going to talk to Ross Clark later on the show. He's got Britain as a laughing stock of the world. Yeah. This is a really interesting actual observation poll that The Sun has organised. Voters are demanding radical reform of immigration, the NHS and the economy. A shocking 66% of people think the country is heading in the wrong direction. I would say they've all been listening to this show, because if you've listened to this show for long enough, you'll know that all of those things are the problem.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Are they not?
Yeah, indeed. And this was people surveyed in the Midlands and the north of England.
That's right, outside of London.
Yep, indeed. And of course, anybody who has the misfortune to live in this once great city and travel through it frequently, like I do, will see evidence of how it's broken on a daily basis. The lawlessness, the crime, the garbage and all of that kind of thing. So now our impressions of it, my impressions of this country, are being reinforced by our friends in the Midlands and the North. And as the front page of The Sun says, fury at government in red wall seats. UK is going in the wrong direction. Yeah. Absolutely. And borders, the NHS and the economy all failing.
Yes. And when you look inside, at some of the things that people care about, which area needs the most radical reform? Immigration, 32%, NHS, 31%, economy, 18%. The three biggest things that we've been saying for a long time. You know, for years and years and years under the Conservatives, we used to say to any Tory minister that came on, you know, do you not understand that people care about the immigration problem in this country? Do you not understand that people are seeing the way that Britain's cities are changing, the towns are changing? People, even just this last weekend were telling me, wandering through Hastings, they're now seeing visibly a change in the demographic of the people who are there. They're seeing, people, young men hanging around on street corners, smoking cigarettes, harassing women. They tend to be of Syrian appearance or Afghan appearance or African appearance. These are not people that were in Hastings even 5 years ago.
If anybody wants to join me in central London, where we are now, for example, I can take you 10, 15 minutes from here, and you will not think you are in the UK.
Yeah.
You seriously will think, what
it's
country have I been transported to?
It is extraordinary.
There are enclaves, sizable, huge enclaves of people that don't look, sound, dress or behave like we do.
Yeah, exactly right. How about this? Is Britain broken? Yes, 68%. No, 23%. Don't know, 9%. I don't know. I never know where those people come from.
Yeah.
Who best represents the views of working people? Nigel Farage, 30%. Keir Starmer, 22%. Kemi Badenoch, 10%. Don't know, 10%. None of them, 28%. So actually more people think nobody represents them than they think Keir Starmer represents them. And Nigel Farage comes out of this poll very well because on the vote share, they say which way you're going to vote with upcoming elections soon, 2 weeks away. 30% for Reform, 27% for Labour, 22% for the Conservatives, 9% for the Greens, 10% for the Lib Dems. Reform are smashing this,
And there he was down in Exeter yesterday.
Yeah.
Getting around his old Nigel, spreading the word and seeing that he's popular almost everywhere he goes.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what people try to do to take him down, and he's had a bit of local difficulty, you might say, with the Rupert Lowe scenario, but that's all seemingly gone away. Nobody cares about that. Nigel Farage for Prime Minister. Who would make the best Prime Minister? Nigel Farage, 26%. Starmer, 25%. Kemi Badenoch, 12%. Don't know, 12%. None of the above, 25%. So once again, none of the above equals the same level as Keir Starmer.
And that's the demographic that Nigel Farage and all politicians will be aiming at.
Yeah.
Those floating voters, those undecided voters, because they invariably are the ones that swing general elections one way or another.
Right.
That's fairly small percentage. But that's a large percentage now compared to usual polls. You normally have none of the above would be a much smaller number.
Right.
But of course, people are so disaffected with the way this country is running. People have not forgotten or forgiven the Tories for everything that they got wrong.
Yeah.
People are living the Labour...
Which was a lot, by the way.
Which was a lot.
Right.
People are living the Labour nightmare here and now, and everybody's going, what is going to get us out of this mess? And I think not only politically do we have huge problems, but I think culturally we've got massive problems in so much as that the useless seem to get promoted into positions of power and authority. And not only are they useless, but they're intolerant.
Yes.
And they impose DEI doctrines and ideology on people. And they are utterly intolerant of anybody who offers a differing or a dissenting view.
Right.
And of course, every good boss wants differing and dissenting views.
You would think.
Because it's from those that you actually learn and embrace.
But in this week alone, we've heard that the West Yorkshire Police have been operating a policy where white recruits are actively discouraged from applying for jobs. We've got the NHS saying that they absolutely happily promote people from ethnic minorities. And this morning we've got a story on the front page of the Telegraph saying that the NHS has admitted that they actually fast-track ethnic minorities to top jobs to meet diversity quotas. And more people who listen to this show and watch this show and have done for many years, or even if they're newbies, have come on and said, what is going on? Why is it that this government and this country seems to denigrate and punish white, British, working class people at the expense of almost anybody else?
Yeah, and people joining police forces like Thames Valley and West Yorkshire are now being taught about slavery, about white privilege.
Yeah.
You know, I lived in a flat when I was a teenager with my single mum.
Right.
Tell me what white privilege I've had.
Yeah.
You know, if I'd sat down in Endon Training School back in the day and been taught that kind of nonsense, I'd have thought, what on earth is going on?
I lived in a flat when I was at uni where we had an electricity meter, and if nobody had any money, when the electricity went off, it just went off. Yeah. And you sat there for the rest of the night and hoped that in the morning somebody would come up with some way of making some money. so you could actually put the electricity on and cook some breakfast.
Remember those strikes back in the 70s when we had to sit round candles?
Absolutely
for
right.
any light and warmth. It was all we had.
That's why I learned to speak in the way that I do, because there was no other entertainment. Just had to keep taking the mickey out of my dad. It was the only thing I could do until he whacked me. You know, but there we are. Listen, at 19 minutes past 6, we got lots to talk about. This from Lord Damon, who says this from Wigan. Here, Britain is broken. We all know that. The way the British are treated in our own country. Mike and Peter, in your 100% honest opinion, what do you think we can do to sort this country in a way that treats all of us in equal measure? Do you think the United Kingdom is completely gone and there is no way back? Well, I don't, actually. I think there is a way back, and I think one of the things that we do is we continue to have these conversations on channels like this, and we influence what it is that the powers that be do, because we get to talk to them in ways that other people don't.
I completely agree. I think there is a very, very serious problem amongst the intellectual, the university-educated elite, if you will. I think over the years, the blue-collar jobs that used to be the bedrock of this society have been downtrodden and destroyed to the point of being
sold off to the Chinese, quite frankly.
Extinct, many of them. You know, back in the day when I was growing up as a youngster, men predominantly, and of course more women were coming into the workplace, but a man could have a blue-collar job in a factory.
And be very proud of it, by the way.
Very proud of it, and could aspire, because they earned a decent wage, to have a nice 3-bed semi, a car on the drive, and have a good summer holiday every year. And all of that has been absolutely destroyed. Take, for example, retail. Okay, a job, a profession that used to be a meritocracy and not an aristocracy. There are people sitting in boardrooms of the big retailers that started on the shop floor. And that's why I love the retail sector. Absolutely love it and have a passion for it, and I worked in it. It was my first job. What has happened is, in those days, somebody on the shop floor, they knew that the CEO of the company might earn 6 times what they earn, right? But they'd accept it, that person had climbed.
But they'd also aspire to be that man.
Exactly, and they'd like to, they want to be perhaps head of department next, and then head of a floor, and then regional, and all that kind of stuff. But now, of course, you've got CEOs of these companies, and they're on like 60 or 600 times what the floor worker is earning. So that kind of disparity is utterly, utterly perverse. We've got too many very, very, very rich people. I mean, who needs to be a billionaire? Who needs that money? And why is there not more money in the blue-collar jobs that were and should be the bedrock of this society? And while I'm on it, another passion of mine, construction. Look what Blair did when he let thousands of Poles and other Eastern Europeans into the country. So my mates, who were chippies, sparks, plumbers, plasterers and all of that, went from them earning £175 a day. We're getting undercut by Poles who do it for £80 a day and live 10 to a room and all that kind of stuff. And now they want to build 1.5 million homes, and of course they haven't got the chippies and the sparks and the plumbers and all of that, because they've downgraded their jobs.
Because they've all gone somewhere else. Listen, it's a very passionate speech, and I agree with every single word of it. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Morning, Mike. Morning, Peter. Andy in Southsea. So Keir Starmer's gone off on his holidays, has he? Yeah. Without wishing, like, the great British public a happy Easter, no doubt. So, yeah, that about sums him up. And what about Angela Rayner? Where's she off to Ethiopia again? Anyway, great show, Mike. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, I don't think they want her back in Ethiopia, by the way, so she'll probably pick on some other country to go to next time she wants to go on bloody safari. You know what I mean? It's 6:23. We've got lots more to do. There's lots of other stories going on, including the disgraceful state of our prisons. Peter will have a few words to say about that, I'm sure. And that ghastly terrorist, who I think should be locked up in a black box, very, very small black box for the rest of his life. This is Talk.
people really dislike hypocrisy. People really dislike grotesque waste, and this is really grotesque waste, especially when he's telling working families, you know, people who have to scrimp and save to take their children on holiday once a year, flying economy. The message is that, oh, you're going to be shamed if you do that. You really shouldn't do that. But he knows better because he's our green saviour.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:26. I'm Mike Gray with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. It is Tuesday. It is May the 15th, and we're so halfway through the month. We're just a few days away from Easter bank holiday, of course. Nothing from Keir Starmer, of course, on Easter. He's not really said much about Lent at all. I know that some people give me a hard time and say, well, when was the last time you went to church? Well, you know, I was raised in a Catholic church. I used to go to church an awful lot. I don't do it so much now. That's not the point. The point is that we still live in a Christian country, and if Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, wishes to wish people a happy Ramadan or a happy Eid Mubarak, then surely he should wish people a happy Easter as well, which he has yet not done. And we're just a few days away. Let's get a voice note from Steve and Phil.
Steve from Barnsley. I think I might need one of these space flights if it's finding the love. Finding the love. What was the in-flight meal? Magic mushrooms?
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Peter. Great show. Now, don't be mean. Don't be mean to the celebrities. I think we should send more of them to space. In fact, the more the better. We should do it on an industrial scale.
Yeah, perhaps they could do a sort of, you know, what do you call that, Burning Man festival somewhere up on the moon. Perhaps they could do that, or you know, Glastonbury on Mars. That would get rid of a few of them. I'm going to draw your attention to page 7 of The Sun, Peter, because hate preacher Anjem Choudhury has made a return, believe it or not, to the papers, because apparently he is suspected of inspiring the attack on 3 prison officers by Manchester Arena terrorist Hashem Abedi. We talked about this story yesterday. This horrible, ghastly creature who's the brother of the scumbag that blew himself up in Manchester Arena over 8 years ago, apparently decided it would be a great idea to melt some butter, throw it in the face of a female prison guard and stab 2 other prison guards who I think are still in a life-threatening situation but stable. But they're now thinking that Anjem Choudhury, who was in the same prison, might have been the guy behind it all.
An exclusive by Mike Sullivan and Michael Hamilton of The Sun, who have glittering reputations for getting things right.
They do.
The police haven't commented yet, but I'm pretty happy to take what these 2 fine journalists say as being more than credible.
Yeah.
Choudhury has done nothing but spread hate virtually all of his adult life.
Individual, isn't he?
Yeah, he's an absolute
the only thing I'm pleased about this story is that it reminds us that he's still behind bars.
Yeah, I mean, he would slaughter you and I and everyone listening and watching the show in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
He absolutely detests us. He wants Islam to rule the world.
Yeah.
He would happily run us all through with a very large sword and behead our children and all that kind of stuff. He's absolute vermin, as is Abedi. Both Abedis, actually. The one who detonated the bomb and the one who helped build it, his brother. I have a huge amount of respect, admiration and sympathy for prison staff because they deal with the same people as the police do.
Yeah.
There's just a wall that separates their jobs, basically.
Right.
And, of course, they have to deal with the real worst of the worst, and many of them are incarcerated in Frankland. There's things that need to happen here, and I'm going to get back on my blue-collar jobs here, right? OK? The political classes have shown their utter contempt for prison staff by butchering their wages, their pension entitlements, and meaning that a prison officer now who starts work at the age of 18, who will be poorly trained and not paid enough, will have to work till 65 to get their occupational pension. 47 years on the landings when most politicians couldn't hack it for 47 seconds.
Exactly right. And they've also outsourced an awful lot of it, haven't they, to private companies like G4S and various other sort of private security companies. And I'm told they have even lower standards for hiring people and will often hire people who are foreign, who have come into this country as cheap labour, and they'll just give them, you know, a jacket and say, like, you're now a prison officer.
Well, I worked for one of those aforementioned companies, and I ended up doing a 2-page exclusive in the Sunday Times because I went undercover. I worked for them once. I was so utterly appalled at what I saw that I went to a journo mate of mine and said, right, rig me up with a hidden camera and I'm going to expose this company. Bullying, pathetic non-training of certain staff and echoing just what you said, basically.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting used to being proved right a lot these days. You know, almost everything that I've been saying for the last 5 or 6 years on this very show, whether it was on mid-morning or whether it's now, you know, it's depressing how right I've been and how everybody's now beginning to realise it.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And there is some chinks of light here because people are beginning to come forward and tell the truth. The whole of the West Yorkshire police debacle, right? Exposed because a whistleblower came forward and essentially went to the Telegraph to start with. Right?
These are the West Yorkshire Police, of course, for those who don't remember it, who last week were revealed to be blocking deliberately the recruitment of white men to come into the police force.
Yep. And I saw a tiny clip of a story, but I'm hoping that the journo revealed this is going to work on it. Apparently, a brown-faced police officer who was given preferential treatment and rapid promotion got into a role that they weren't yet equipped for. They might have become a very competent police officer in the fullness of time, but they were rushed into a job that they were underqualified,
rapid promotion,
and inexperienced for. And that brown-faced person turned around and said, it did nobody any favours. Didn't do me any favours, didn't do any favours to the officers who knew that I wasn't properly qualified for the job, didn't do the public and victims of crime any favours. You see, all this nonsense, forcing square pegs into round holes, is just not doing
nonsense. Anybody any favours. But the interesting issue about this entire story involving Hashim Abedi, and we're going to have Robert Jenrick come in later on, who lifted the lid on this a couple of weeks ago by saying that there are Muslim gangs, Muslim Brotherhood gangs in particular, running the inside of prisons, right? And he said something's got to be done. A lot of people, Ian Aitchison amongst them, who I think is a great voice on this.
Wonderful.
We've spoken to him many times. He's saying, you know, there should not be the ability for these people to walk around in sort of, you know, cahoots with one another. You know, they should be in isolation. They should not be able to meet up with you know, their sort of, you know, fellow travellers. They should not be allowed to have, you know, access to a kitchen. I mean, it beggars belief you'd have to say this to them.
With their fellow murderous Islamist terrorists.
Exactly.
And they give them a kitchen and cooking utensils and oil. What utter lunacy.
It is incredible, isn't it?
And do you know what? His Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons in 2022, when they did a report on exactly these separation units, they said, the men appreciate them. The men, they're murdering terrorists. Don't call them men.
I don't care
call
if they
them
appreciate
what they
it.
are.
Exactly right. I don't care if they appreciate it or not. And this is indeed the thing. And there's a call here from Ian Aitchison himself in the Times, former prison governor, who carried out a review of Islamist extremists in jails in 2016, says that this boy, this man, should now be put in total isolation, even if it turns him mad. He doesn't care. He said there should not be these areas where they're allowed to mix with each other. It's ridiculous.
And yesterday, families of the Manchester bombing victims, bless them, rest their souls, and bless those people who have got a lifetime of loss to deal with because of this revolting creature behaviour and his brother. They wrote to the Justice Secretary saying this is not what we expected him to be having after he'd been sentenced.
I know.
What an insult it is to all those beautiful lives that were lost and all those other lives that have been deeply affected forever. ever.
Exactly right. Check this out, right? A prison service source said Article 3 and Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which protects against inhumane treatment and the right to respect for family and private life, home and correspondence, have prevented officials placing certain prisoners in close supervision centres or separation. I'm sorry. Let's just get rid of that human rights law, shall we?
Exactly. Let's just bin it off.
Yeah.
Let's just bin it off. Let's think about those prison officers who are still in hospital. Let's think about those people who got blown to smithereens, those children that got blown to smithereens at the Ariana Grande concert. And let's think about people who have to live with a lifetime of loss. To all those clowns, to all those lawyers, to the political classes, do you know what? If you don't listen to us, then there's going to be a price to be paid.
Yeah, absolutely right. Peter's on form this morning, says Jason in Worthing, and he's totally right about the destruction of the construction industry with the import of cheap labour. We now have no skilled trades on site. Blair encouraged our kids to go to university and load them with debt. Kids that studied useless degrees like media studies and sports science. Cheap labour is all they want. Forget training our own workforce. Absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Nick.
Morning, Mike and Peter. Nick Moore from Loughborough. It's quite obvious, really, why this government is promoting this narrative of cultural change, because their only hope of remaining in power for more than one term is to stoke the division that makes the country more easy to govern. A divided country is far more easy to govern than a united country. Have a good day, both of you.
Nick, very well said. Thank you very much indeed. Well, we're here to try and unite things around what is the commonsensical view of the world rather than this government's view of the world. Coming up, we've got more division for you, I'm afraid, Peter, because I'll be telling you about the NHS and how they fast-track ethnic minority staff into senior jobs. That's the latest. And we'll bring you some pictures from Lanzarote. This is Morning Glory, 6:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:39. I'm Mike Graham. Peter Blexley's here as well, and he is absolutely on fire this morning. We got plenty to talk about, including, of course, the story that nobody wants to talk about, which is the tax returns of senior members of the government. This is from last year. We'll get into that in a minute, because I don't believe a word of it. It looks very dodgy, the way that they've put these tax returns in. Let's speak instead. We were just talking about the police department, Peter, particularly up in West Yorkshire. What we didn't mention was we also had a story yesterday about the Greater Manchester Police, who apparently were wandering around the city centre because they were asked to do so, basically targeting anyone who looked like they might be from an ethnic minority, asking them if they fancied joining the police. And they and with the invitation, they said, "Don't worry if you haven't got any qualifications. That doesn't matter."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They targeted these people as they came out of supermarkets.
Yeah.
we've got a shoplifting epidemic. Wouldn't it be great if our police services actually gathered themselves together and mobilised, like they did for the riots, quite rightly, when they mobilised 5,500 or 6,000, like the Met did for the Notting Hill Carnival when they mobilised 7,000 police officers. Shoplifting is ruining the high street experience for so many people.
And it's ruining businesses as well.
Destroying businesses and adding to the fear of living in a lawless country. Why don't they mobilise thousands of police officers to get on the streets and have an initiative to get a grip on this shoplifting? Answer to my own question, I'll tell you why they won't do it, because the government will say, please don't. We've not got enough CPS prosecutors. The courts are too busy, and we haven't got any room in jail.
Right.
What a joke.
I know, absolutely ridiculous. Well, I've got more bad news, I'm afraid, for the level of your arteries and your pulse this morning. NHS trusts are admitting in the Telegraph to fast-tracking ethnic minorities to top jobs to meet diversity quotas. At least 11 major hospital trusts around England have schemes or programmes focused on helping ethnic minority employees gain promotion to senior roles. I mean, who comes up with this cobblers, and why do they think it's a good idea?
Quotas.
What is wrong with them?
What's a load of nonsense, okay? Mike...
What a load of old quotas.
Are you sitting in that chair delivering this incredibly successful show because you were filling a quota?
I'm not.
Because they wanted a white bloke of a certain age?
No.
No, you're doing it.
In fact, there's more likelihood of me being removed as a white bloke of a certain age, because actually I don't fulfil a quota at all.
You've got the job because you're blooming good at it. You got it on merit, not to fill some kind of quota.
Also, they couldn't find anybody else. I mean, but that's just another story.
And if you had got it in order to fill a quota, how would you feel about that?
I know, you'd be feeling constantly, I would think, insecure.
Like a con man.
Like a con man. Like they talk about people with, what do they call it? What's the syndrome they've got?
Imposter
syndrome, that's it. Because you think you've got something that you shouldn't have because you're not really qualified. I would hate that. I would absolutely hate that.
Yep, and yet these clowns, and these are all your DEI brigade as well. You know what I mean? All these intolerant HR people.
Oh, yes.
Or human capital management, as they probably call them.
Oh, they now call them head of people, they now call them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And this is their kind of lunacy. It's what they come up with. It's what they think works. It's what they think should be done. But with the worm turning, possibly, are we going to get whistleblowers who are truthful, saying, you know what, I got over-promoted, it didn't suit me, didn't suit the company or the organisation, and shouldn't have happened.
Right.
I hope we will. I suspect they might do.
Without wishing to in any way denigrate those people who have been falsely promoted, might it be possible that the reason the NHS is a complete and utter basket case and is run really, really badly is because a lot of the people that have been promoted into management jobs don't know what they're doing?
And not been promoted on merit.
No, they haven't. Check this,
really like that. Promote on merit.
Why not, indeed? A number of trusts have dedicated teams running leadership programmes for ethnic minority staff to boost their chance of securing promotion. Such schemes are run by university hospitals in Birmingham, university hospitals in Leicester and Newcastle upon Tyne. I mean, unbelievable stuff, this. Even Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells operates career workshops for ethnic minority staff and runs a reverse mentoring programme where junior ethnic minority employees mentor board members.
Yeah.
What?
The nonsense goes on in the same article about NHS equality, diversity and inclusion policies, right?
Call me old-fashioned, right? Would it not be just a better idea to help the people who are sick and to make them feel better?
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah.
Any chance of that?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Make the system run effectively for the benefit of people who are not well.
Maybe don't have people waiting 5 or 6 hours in A&E, you know, with your, white ally training. You know, have it trained a few bleeding doctors.
I think if you waited 5 or 6 hours, you'd come out of there thinking you'd had a result. There are people having a lot longer waits than that, unfortunately.
True.
And they're trying to get them to adopt this Rooney rule, right? And it's come from American football.
Yes.
Okay. Where it says
it's got nothing to do with Wayne Rooney, which some people think
exactly.
it does.
Ethnic minorities have to be shortlisted for interviews, and they've got to make managers justify hiring white British people.
Yes.
The lunacy of it. You hire a white British person and then you might be held to account and have to justify that. What a load of tripe.
I know, what a load of old tosh. Now, we're going to take a little side alley here, just because it's been very serious so far this morning, apart from Katy Perry speaking about love on the Blue Origin flight. I'm going to ask you about this story on page 3 of the Mail. Only a third of young British women want to take their partner's surname when they marry, according to research, right? which is an interesting one, because I've watched over the years many women that I know, friends of mine, who have become double-barrelled because they haven't wanted to lose their maiden name. And I thought you might have a view on this, Peter.
I've always wondered what happens.
Mrs. Blexley?
She, not at work.
Right.
Right, because when she married me, we were in the police together, and I was going through a particularly acrimonious split from the Metropolitan Police.
Okay.
And Sarah felt it probably best to keep her maiden name.
Right.
Rather than draw
rather than be associated
attraction.
with a brigand like you.
Correct. But in personal life, of course, everything is the same.
But doesn't it make things complicated if you go travelling, for example? I mean, the passport name, once you change it, you know, I mean, I also know women who have been married and then have become dislocated, divorced from that person, and have had to change their name back to their maiden name, and then got married again, changed it. I mean, you know, it can be difficult for women.
Yeah, but Sarah's passport is Blexley, you know, and all that has always been Blexley. It's just at work. She's just kept her maiden name for work purposes. But I've often wondered, and I don't know if anybody's got the answer to this, but what happens when two people who have both got double-barrelled names get married? For example, if you're Blenkinson Jones and then you're Archibald Harvey, when they get married, do they become Blenkinson Jones, Archibald Harvey?
Probably. I don't know. The answer
that's
to that.
a bit of a mouthful.
I mean, there's a lot of footballers are double-barrelled now, aren't they?
Yeah.
And people assume, oh, they must be posh. No, because it's no longer a posh thing to be double-barrelled. It's just a kind of a thing that some people do because they don't want to lose their initial, you know, maiden name.
Yeah.
I mean, even maiden name is probably not something that people say anymore.
No,
because you're not a maiden. There's not allowed to be that.
Yeah, or probably.
Anyway, it's just quite an interesting thing,
and
it's just one of those talking points that I thought we would talk about through the course of the show this morning. So, I mean, because I know because I've got my first given name was actually Archibald, right? Which has caused me massive problems over the course of years because that's my passport, but it's not my name. I don't use it. I use Michael. But my mother was kind of forced into doing it because it was the firstborn son of the firstborn son, family tradition, all of that, right? But it means that I've now got effectively two names, one of which, you know, works in some credit scenarios and one of which doesn't. So, you know, it all becomes a bit mad.
Mike, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but in certain circles you've got lots of other names.
Well, that's true too. I mean, I get plenty of names on social media, funnily enough. I'll probably revisit this particular situation soon. 6:47, coming up, we're going to talk about Lanzarote. By the way, for those of you who have been particularly bothered about Donald Trump and the tariffs, the FTSE had its best day yesterday since the tariff problems began. So the fight back has become a thing. So and unless you're absolutely claiming a pension right now, don't worry, it's all going to come back. Water bills are going to rise again now, so you'll need more money than ever. And 3 billion litres of water lost into the ground in this country every single day. It's an absolute disgrace. We'll talk about that as well. This is Morning Glory.
Right, now I'm not fussed about police officers having a whole raft of qualifications, but they must be able to read and write. And I understand in 2025, if by way of a recruitment drive, they need to teach people how to read and write, which I would still find a bit astonishing, then so be it. But police officers write statements, read them out in court, write crime reports and the such like. Anyway, there's so much lunacy about policing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:51. David J says this morning, Mike. Nothing much happening today, is there? I think I'll go back to bed. Just kidding. I don't know how you're going to fit it all in. More coffee needed, methinks. I think that's probably right. Peter Blexy's here with us. We should kick off, I suppose, this section with the big story on the front page of the Telegraph and the Mail, and it's the bin strike in Birmingham, which is still dragging on. And, you know, it actually, they're saying it's in its sort of 5th week, but it actually started in January, right? And they're saying on the front of the Mail, bin strike grinds on as Labour is humiliated because Angela Rayner's been desperately trying to get them all to sit around the table and come to an agreement. It's all about just 17 bin men, it turns out, but they've rejected the offer from Birmingham City Council once again, and the Telegraph are saying that actually the Unite Union is plotting to spread these strikes all over the country. They're already embroiled in similar disputes in Yorkshire, Cambridgeshire. Some Unite staff in Sheffield are already on strike.
What a deep, deep stain upon our nation.
It is.
That
it's kind of indicative of broken Britain, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure many people have seen on their televisions the images of these thousands of tons of now rat-infested garbage.
It's awful.
Piling up across the streets of Britain's second largest
15
city.
feet deep, 21,000 tonnes of rubbish.
I mean, it's just appalling.
Yeah.
Absolutely appalling. What kind of basket case country have we come to?
Yeah.
And we might touch on other stories about billions of litres of water being sprayed.
Leaking into the ground.
And it brings us all back to that front page headline of The Sun that we discussed earlier about broken Britain.
Exactly right.
If you can't take the rubbish away, your country is broken. But of course, here we have Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, urging the bin men to take a deal when she took 10 grand from Unite for her election campaign.
Indeed she did. And she also had the two houses problem and all the rest of it. And we're going to talk again about some of the tax ramifications because their income tax returns have been published, which we'll come back to in a minute. But here's one for you. Conservative West Midlands MP Wendy Morton said the rats, who are dubbed squeaky blinders after the TV drama, will be dancing in the streets. The rat problem in Birmingham is so bad now that the rats are getting huger, bigger and bigger by the day. The last time they were as big as cats, so we're talking about a rat that size, you know, which even rat catchers are struggling to catch.
They won't be able to fit down the drains and the sewers, will they?
Won't.
They'll be so big.
They'll be stuck. Absolutely incredible stuff.
It's a basic kind of thing that in a first world country, a developed country, you should have your garbage taken away.
Yeah. Well,
It's
also,
quite
people
simple.
are paying a very, very high price for that. They're paying more in council tax than they've ever paid. Can you imagine sitting there in Birmingham as you're about to write a cheque or transfer money to the council for your council tax, thinking to yourself, what am I actually getting? Let's have a look at what Angela Rayner said about this a couple of days ago.
Well, we know that the council have been engaged in consultation and discussion and negotiation with Unite. That's a good move. That's happened over the weekend and the last couple of days. There is a significantly improved offer on the table for the workers, and I'm urging Unite to suspend their action and to accept that offer.
would that offer mean that no worker would have to lose around £8,000 of their salary?
Well, I'm not getting into the details of that offer, but what I will say, it's a very significant improved offer that the council have made, and I'm urging Unite to suspend that action and to accept that offer. We want to see a fair resolution to this. We know that there is historic unequal pay here in Birmingham, which caused some of the challenges it had when it issued the Section 114 bankruptcy notice. We want to see a fair process and negotiation, and I think the offer that's on the table now is significantly improved, and that Unite should suspend their action and accept that offer.
Yeah, they have not suspended their action and they have not accepted the offer. What are you going to do now?
Well, do you know what I'm also going to add whilst we're discussing this story? From the footage I've seen, there's also been some pretty scuzzy behaviour by members of the public.
Yeah.
Because when we put our bins out, we don't put a sofa out or an armchair or a bed head or a fridge.
Yeah.
And I've seen plenty of that. I think some scuzzy people are taking advantage of it, and instead of doing the right thing by putting those items in the back of their car or getting someone with a van or a skip or something to get it down the tip to be disposed of properly, they're just being opportunist and adding to the grief and the aggravation and the mess.
Yes.
So pack it in.
Absolutely right. And a lot of people say that in some parts of this country, the streets are pretty badly looked after anyway, in terms of littering, in terms of the things that people discard out of cars, out of their houses.
Yeah.
And some people tell me, and again, these are immigrant communities, many of them, which are just really, really badly looked after, because people who have come to this country from other countries don't seem to have the ability to put their rubbish in a bin.
It's a rather simple thing to do.
It's not difficult, is it?
But if you come from a culture whereby that is not done, then we have to suffer the consequences.
Right. Well, it's another problem. 113 litres just from your own home. Leaky pipes waste 3 billion litres of water every single day. I find it hard to imagine this. I mean, I drink, say, a litre bottle of water every day. I can't imagine what 3 billion bottles of that would look like, but that's how I presume it would be enough to fill not only this room that we're in, not only the floor that we're in, but this entire building of water. You would fill it with water, and that's how much is leaking into the ground every single day. What an absolute shambles. I mean, you run a water company, but, maybe you should fix the pipes, maybe.
You run a water company on a huge, whopping great salary.
Yes, indeed.
Which they're all on.
Yeah.
And the incompetence that floods our nation, every pun intended, is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
How have these clowns got promoted? How have they got into the positions that they're in, and whereby they run these basic, essential utility companies so poorly, whilst, of course, hiving off millions upon millions for their shareholders?
Yeah.
It's a broken Britain. Back to the front page of the Sun again.
Back to the front page of the Sun again. Let's get a voice note from Richard on the police.
Hello, Mike. Richard here from Crowborough. Do you remember that episode of The Young Ones where Neil joins the police? Well, we laughed because the standards were so hilariously low, we just couldn't believe it, and there was such humour in it. Well, talk about life imitating art. The joke's certainly on us now, isn't it? Have a good day, mate. All the best. Bye.
It is. Richard, I love The Young Ones. It was what a great show that was. Thank you for that, for reminding us. This one from Brian in Spain. He says, Peter and Mike, do you think Keir Starmer might be heading to Madrid to support his beloved Arsenal? No free tickets here. I'll keep my eyes peeled. Keep the faith. Well, I mean, the way things are going, somebody suggested to me yesterday that never mind taking over British Steel, maybe he's going to say the government should take over Arsenal with their ever-failing campaign to win the Premier League.
Yeah, but of course they're still in the Champions League, aren't they? And they must be favourites to progress, holding a 3-0 lead over Real Madrid, astonishingly. So.
I wouldn't bet on that, to be honest. You go to the Bernabeu. I mean, I know we don't talk about football a lot, but, you know, how many times have you seen Real Madrid win 4-0 when they had to?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
But if Starmer is out there, you can guarantee he won't be in his regular seat, of course, because he's not allowed to.
No.
He'll be in corporate somewhere.
Of course.
You know, having
with the King of Spain.
With the club,
With the King of Spain, absolutely right.
Man of the people he is, so. Man of the people.
It's broken Britain. Peter Blacksley, what a pleasure. Absolutely brilliant to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Good to have you back on a Tuesday. This is Morning Glory. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking about not just the state of Britain, but the state of this government, because the Speaker of the House has been out on his jollies again as well. This is Morning Glory.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? And we'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. It's still pretty gloomy and dark out there. I mean, this time yesterday, we had a beautiful sunrise, and I was going, isn't it great that we're moving headlong into summer, because now it's getting lighter every morning, it's getting lighter every evening. Soon we're going to be walking around in shorts and T-shirts. It's going to be fantastic. Well, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you. If you haven't managed to look out the window yet, it is absolutely tipping it down here in London. I don't know what it's doing where you are, but I can tell you that it's probably not going to be a very nice day, I'm afraid. So I think we've got rain for most of this week. But we've got lots of other things to talk about. Don't worry. We've been talking about double-barrelled names, whether or not you take the name of your husband when he got married. We've got the bin strikes carrying on in Birmingham. Keir Starmer's gone on holiday, believe it or not, but he's refusing to give Angela Rayner the reins of power, and he's saying she's not going to be running the country. I'm going to be running it from my holiday destination. I'm not sure where he's gone. We think he's gone short haul somewhere in the southern Mediterranean. My bet is probably Spain. My joke is that he's gone to Lanzarote, which is currently suffering from a particularly heavy bout of rain and flooding, because you know what it's like. You know, Keir Starmer is the accident that's waiting to happen everywhere you go. Let's have a little listen, though, because sometimes you need a little light in your life. Katy Perry went up into space yesterday. It was supposed to be an 11-minute ride. She was in space for 4 minutes. Here's what she said afterwards.
What you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because you got to trust in yourself on this journey, and then you're feeling the love when you come down, for sure, and you're feeling that strength. So I feel really connected to that strong divine feminine right now.
Strong divine feminine. Yeah, OK then. Must be the same as Rachel Reeves. She's been giving us all the benefit of her tax return. We'll be looking into that in this hour. We'll also be finding out what Miliband is doing in China, because that's where he's been. And why is it that Ed Miliband, the man who has wrecked our economy thanks to his net zero premonition madness, is actually basically trying now to say that I need to fly all over the world. He's spending £65,000 to £70,000 flying around the world to tell everyone not to fly anywhere. Also, on the same subject, the Speaker of the House, Long Haul Hoyle, that's right, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has now pushed over £300,000 worth of taxpayers' money because of the travels that he's made. He made a recent trip to Malaysia, which cost us all about 26 grand. Brilliant. Absolutely fine. Fantastic the way these people take the mickey out of us. We'll be talking as well about Broken Britain. Front page of The Sun this morning. A fantastic exclusive by Harry Cole, and he'll be coming on the show later on, as will Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Minister. Broken Britain. Nobody believes that we are going in the right direction. It looks as though the Labour government is going to get a massive spanking coming up in the local elections. Reform and Nigel Farage polling incredibly high. We'll get into all of that. This, of course, is Morning Glory. Let us get it on. Now, lots of you are responding to what we said about the double-barrelled name thing, because apparently more and more women are no longer taking their husband's name and keeping their maiden name. Kevin says, Mike, my wife has a double-barrelled name. Only issue is the hyphen when booking airline tickets. Actually, after 22 years, I wish I'd changed my name to include my wife's surname. It does get trendy, difficult. Morning, Mike, says Martin in Stroud. Talking of double-barrelled names, some good friends of ours got married many years ago, and it's a true story, I promise. Angela Marks married Robert Spencer. Luckily, Ange chose not to keep her maiden name, because that would have been Angela Marks Spencer, I suppose. Oh, yeah, Marks and Spencer, get it, sorry. I didn't realise, I read it the first time and I thought, what's he talking about? I thought it was something about marking somebody. Mike, my wife, my son is 19 and dumped his last girlfriend, says Chris, because her dad sat him down and told him to take his daughter's name. What? Why would you do that? That sounds a bit mad, doesn't it? Anyway, let's talk to Joanna Bell, political journalist. I don't know if you've ever been married, Joanna, but, I mean, would you take your husband's name and give away the name Bell?
Definitely, with my reputation.
Well, listen, you can say that. I mean, I couldn't possibly comment. Not for me to say. Let's get stuck into Broken Britain, front page of The Sun today. I think it's basically confirming the thing that everybody knows, which is that nothing really works. 66% of the people of this country think that the country is heading in the wrong direction.
Well, you know, it really, really is. I mean, it's not going in the right direction, is it, Mike?
It's certainly not.
You know, there's talk about all the councils across the country going on strike and the bins not being collected because of what's happening in Birmingham. So it's really reached a critical level where there's got to be a watershed moment when this whole thing collapses.
Yeah. Well, this is what I've been saying ever since, you know, the Labour government got in, and I never knew, and I always said, I don't know what it's going to be, I don't know what the tipping point is going to be, and it wasn't the economy, it wasn't the budget, it wasn't the small boats, but it's going to be something. It might be the bin strikes, it might be, you know, whatever is the latest situation with the China syndrome with the British Steel plant up in Scunthorpe. But which area needs the most radical reform according to the survey that they did with Survation? Immigration 32%, the NHS 31%. The NHS is still an absolute basket case, and the economy 18%. Those are the three big things that people care about.
I mean, of course, everybody wants money in their pocket. I do. You know, it really is reaching a critical level where people don't have money anymore to go to the pub or put food on the table. That's why reform are gaining such traction in the polls, because people just want change and they want the old band out and new ones in. But the problem is, I don't think that reform is going to replace the Conservative Party because they're too right-wing.
Right. Well, you never know. I mean, we've got local elections coming up, but what's striking in this poll as well is how big the Labour majority was when you look back at the 2024 vote. It says Labour had 39% of the vote, the Conservatives 24%, the Reform only had 18%, but it now looks as though that's all changed. You know, Labour in the current prediction for the local elections, 27%, with Reform on 30%. So Reform have literally, you know, moved up 12%, and the Labour Party have moved down 12%. So it's a straight switch.
Well, it's you know,
so what I mean is by that they're now taking votes away from Labour, not just from Tories.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. But you have to admit, like, their appeal is very narrow. They don't have the left, centre, or right people within Reform Party. So I can't really see how the British electorate are going to vote for them, especially without Rupert Lowe.
But isn't that the point, though? Because Rupert Lowe has caused, you know, what you might have said was a rift in the party, but it doesn't seem to have affected their popularity. So Rupert Lowe perhaps has peeled away some of the people who are more on the right wing of that party, and he's left Reform as a much more sort of middle-of-the-road party who are now campaigning on issues like British Steel, campaigning on issues like immigration, but they're not campaigning on issues that, say, for example, the more right-wing section of Reform would be going for.
Well, that's it. But, you know, like you said earlier, Labour had massive support at the polls and, you know, they didn't maintain it. And it's the same thing that's going to happen with Reform. They're not going to be able to maintain that support because they just don't have the, you know, the representatives to...
They haven't got the depth, have they? That's the thing. But they But they might have that. I mean, it's going to be very interesting what happens on May the 1st. I mean, again, the question, how will you vote if you have local elections this year? 29% Reform, 24% Conservative, Labour 20%. And I've been listening to a lot of Labourites who have said that they've never seen such hostility to a government on the doorstep as they try to canvass for them over the course of the coming weeks and what they've seen already. So, I mean, there's an awful lot of people who have turned against Labour. Many of them voted for them back in July.
Well, that could possibly be the reason why Keir Starmer is not handing the keys to Angela Rayner while he's away on holidays.
Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't give Angela Rayner the keys to anything. I mean, you know, before you know it, she's moved in. You know, do you remember the story of when she went to see him one night and she was waiting for him for 5 minutes and she opened a bottle of scotch, which turned out to be an incredibly valuable bottle of scotch. It wasn't supposed to be opened, and she just poured herself a drink out of it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, it could happen to the best of us, but you know, that was his dead friend's whiskey. I think it was a bit dramatic, but I mean, leaving that to one side, Keir didn't even want her to be his PM. He was forced to put her in that position, and you know, I don't blame him for not trusting her with the keys because, you know, she is, you know, she's a loose cannon.
She is. That's the problem. But I'm told, and I was told this yesterday, that Starmer's still quite worried about the left wing of the Labour Party, which is represented largely by Angela Rayner and Ed Miliband, bizarrely. And Miliband's on the front pages of the Times today, basically saying that he's encouraging Chinese involvement in key parts of the UK's critical infrastructure, less than a month before the government wrested control of British Steel. We heard from all sorts of people in Labour government yesterday that British Steel must be recaptured from the Chinese because they've been behaving in what might be described as a very unethical way, trying to sabotage the company, trying to sabotage our energy. And yet Ed Miliband is getting into bed with these people saying, oh, don't worry, come and build a load of solar panels for us, come and build a load of wind farms for us. You know, it's dangerous, isn't it?
Well, Miliband was very naive in dealing with the Chinese over Scunthorpe. I mean, they literally bought it for £1 and then they tried to close it because they want to leave the UK totally reliant on Chinese steel. It's very smart, and it does make you think maybe this is why Donald Trump has imposed such high tariffs, because perhaps the Chinese are, you know, playing dirty tricks to dominate the market.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that that's what they're doing. But it's very unclear still whether this, you know, so-called rescue plan that's been launched by Labour is actually going to work, because I had James Murray on here yesterday from the government, and he could not guarantee that the coal that's now coming from Japan on a ship is actually going to be delivered in time to keep the furnaces going. He was a bit cryptic about it. He said, oh, you know, we can tell you that it's very close to the plant, but he can't tell you exactly where it is. And as far as I know, it's still not there.
Well, so basically, you know, what you're talking about is 1970s style power cuts, bins on the road, no one picking it up. The only difference is that we have, you know, an influx of illegal immigrants to boot.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to make the 70s actually look like the 60s if it actually all kicks off, because I remember the 70s. I'm sure you're too young to remember it. But, you know, it was awful. It was ridiculous. We had no power for literally 22 hours of the day. We had 1 hour in the morning, so you could make breakfast, and 1 hour in the evening. The rest of the time, you were sitting around in candlelight with no heating on. Nothing.
Oh, it sounds awful. I mean, it could definitely, and it's definitely on the horizon again if Miliband has anything to do with it.
Well, exactly. I mean, Telegraph was saying today that the bin strike in Birmingham might just be the beginning. You know, they still haven't solved it. You know, they're now, I mean, they've been on strike basically more or less since the beginning of January. They've got rubbish piling up to the tune of something like 21,000 tonnes. Unite Union now saying that they might start similar strikes in Cambridgeshire, in Yorkshire, and already there's some Unite staff out on strike in Sheffield.
Well, look, you know, like I said earlier, it's going to happen across the country because you're dealing with, you know, the Equality Act, and Birmingham Council handled it completely wrong. And it's going to culminate in the knock-on effect that there's going to be, you know, trash all over Britain.
Yeah.
Like the 70s. And now,
we're not just talking about immigration either.
What's that?
I said we're not just talking about immigration either. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. Yeah, I've got some breaking news for you. UK average, another lie from the Labour government. They keep telling us that, you know, earnings are outstripping inflation. Well, it turns out they're not now. UK average regular earnings growth decreased to 5.6% in the 3 months to February, and the rate of UK unemployment remains unchanged at 4.4%. So despite what Keir Starmer says every time he pops up with his sleeves rolled up, you know, inflation is not being outstripped by people's wages.
Yeah, look, you know, the whole thing is an absolute disgrace. You know, they're talking about all these cuts and, you know, at the end of the day, you've got the Speaker of the House spending 40 grand going on big holidays abroad. It just, none of it makes sense, Mike. You know, it doesn't make sense.
It really doesn't, and the Labour government don't seem to know how to get out of it. They don't seem to know how to solve one problem after another, which they're getting presented with.
Well, that's the thing, you know, and it really is. They've released their what was it, their pay?
Oh yes, the tax
Rachel
returns,
Reid.
yeah.
Exactly, the tax returns.
Which don't look right to me, I'm afraid.
Well, it doesn't, but they haven't shown, you know, the expenses claimed or any of the tax reliefs applied. I want to see the full accounts and to see what exactly we're dealing with here.
Well, exactly. I mean, it won't surprise you to know that I've got some of it in front of me here, and some of the registered interest that they've had to, you know, put down on paper, which only doesn't even include their own personal expenses that they've claimed as MPs. But there's all sorts of donations, like one, for example, from David Sainsbury. This is to Rachel Reeves, 35,000 quid. Now, you know, I don't know what she did with that. I'm sure she'll tell us that she spent it on some kind of, you know, special event or something that she put on. But, you know, there's no accounting for that kind of benefit. And clearly it is a benefit. And there's a whole load of them. 99,000, right, from Green Finance Institute Limited. Well, did you pay any tax on that? And should you have? Another one from David Sainsbury, 15,000. This is in 2024. Another one from FGS Global Limited comes in at 12,929 quid.
Wow.
A very odd number. But, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of pounds swilling around in these people's bank accounts. And nobody knows whether it's taxable or what they're getting for it or what they're doing with it. And that, you know, so the idea that they've released tax returns that say, oh, yeah, I paid £20,000 in income tax. Well, really? Did you? I mean, don't you think you should have paid a bit more?
Well, it just looks like, you know, they're basically trying to protect themselves for when they leave office. So, you know, David Cameron did it. George Osborne got a plum roll at BlackRock after he left government. So, you know, it's obvious that they're taking this money in lieu of benefits when they get out of politics.
It would certainly seem that way. Listen, Joanna, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Joanna Bell, a political journalist there with a rundown of all the things that are part of broken Britain. UK regular average earnings growth decreased, as we just said, to 5.6%. Let's get a word with Ricky, who wants to talk about the bin crisis. Ricky, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad at all. What do you want to tell me?
Well, I don't know whether anybody's noticed, but I can't get my head round how 17 low-skilled workers can hold a city the size of Birmingham to ransom.
Yeah.
I mean, surely it would take a day to train someone to be a dustman. I mean, what next? The road sweepers are going to go on strike and hold the city to ransom. Can you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
17 low-skilled workers that you could train someone in a day to do, get someone to drive the lorry, and you're sorted. So I just can't get my head around it, mate. Well,
No.
It's just the most bizarre thing.
It really is. It doesn't make any sense.
It's not like you've got 700 doctors or something like that. I don't understand it, but you've got 17 dustmen.
Right. And also, how can you not just replace them and get somebody around there to start going round in a dustbin lorry, picking up the rubbish and putting it in the back of the lorry?
It's madness.
It is.
What's it going to be next? The road sweepers? Are the road sweepers going to go on strike and stop the country? It's just mental. Honestly, something. I can't. I have no words.
No, I get it. It doesn't make any sense to me either. Ricky makes a very good point. Thank you very much for that. This is the kind of thing, and I said this, a couple of weeks ago. I said this will spread, and this is the kind of thing that brings down a government. And I remember people on social media were being very dismissive of me, as ever. But of course, I always turn out to be right, and it will turn out to be right again. That this will be the thing that cripples this government. Because if you're paying an increased amount of council tax and you can't even get your bin taken away, that is going to drive you insane. And we are literally 2 weeks away from a local election when those kinds of things are very much the issue of whether people actually are happy in their own community. So, if you live in Sheffield, where there's already a bit of a bin strike, love to hear from you. If you live in Cambridgeshire, apparently it could be happening there. If you live in Sussex, which I know a little bit about, you will know that the bin collection service there is pretty useless. Quite often they forget to do it altogether. The whole system is creaking and crumbling. Why? Because Britain is broken. As the Sun front page says. On the issue of names, says Lindsay from the Shires, I've got a good one for you. I've got a laugh or I'd cry. My maiden name is Wright, and my partner's name is McCracken. For obvious reasons, I wouldn't want to take that name, and even worse if I double barrel it. Any suggestions? Well, I would stick with Wright, because you don't want to be wrong, do you? If your name is Wright, I don't think you should ever change it. Just call yourself Lindsay Wright. And that way, everybody knows you're always right. One from Stephen in Belfast. Have the good folk of Birmingham tried standing outside their house of a Thursday, clapping and rattling saucepans? Apparently the public sector love that kind of futile gesture. Yeah, maybe they should try that. Except they're not clapping anyone because there's nobody coming by to pick anything up. Lee from Hampshire says, morning Mike, the problem with double-barrelled names is that eventually two people will meet with double-barrelled names, then there will be quadruple-barrelled names, then it will be octuple. Yeah, it's another idea where the consequences haven't been thought through, just like everything else these days, says Lee. I don't think it's quite as bad as that. Brian from Spain says this, Mike, when women say they're not changing their names due to not wanting to take a man's name, the name they have is from a man, their father. Shouldn't they change it to their mother's name? That doesn't work either, as her mother is her grandfather's name. Give it up, girls. I don't think it's an issue of misogyny here. I think it's just a matter of whether people want to change their name or not. Because when you do change your name, it does actually get complicated. On passports, on, things like insurance, on, all sorts of, driver's licenses, on whether when you travel, if you don't take your husband's name, if you've got children together, you can sometimes be stopped at Channel Ports. Because it's happened in my situation where people go, are you sure that this is your mother? They say to the kids. We've had other people. I mean, Hugh Grant, funnily enough, came back. He put a tweet out, I think, about a week ago saying he'd come back from holiday and the children were taken to one side and asked, are these really your parents? So, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. And if your names are not right, they get even more suspicious. It's very weird. It's coming up to 23 minutes past 7. This is Talk.
They're not going, oh, is anybody watching? I'll just nick 3 bottles of Coca-Cola and a sandwich. They're just walking in and taking it.
Yeah, well, once upon a time, in order to be a successful thief, you had to employ a certain degree of guile. Now you don't need to do that at all. It's an easy choice. Career-wise, it's fairly risk-free.
Yeah.
Because store detectives aren't going to do anything about it. Most members of the public are rightly not going to do anything about it. And unfortunately, the police are too busy on their diversity training courses or checking their white privilege to do anything about it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 7:26. It's still looking pretty grim out there. I mean, I can't see any sunshine, can't see anything but sort of cloud and mist and rain and all sorts of nasty things. Robert Jenrick coming up on the show later on. He's going to be here in the studio to talk about the latest situation, not only with the state of our prison service, but specifically with the prison problem regarding that brother of the Manchester Arena bomber who was found guilty yesterday of throwing throwing melted butter, boiling butter, you might say, onto the face of a female prison guard and stabbing 2 other guards. It now turns out that a hate preacher, Anjem Chowdhury, might have been behind the attack because he was in the same part of the prison as this guy. Which seems to me to be entirely inappropriate and entirely wrong. And Ian Aitchison, the man who knows everything there is to know about prisons in this country, has basically said that these people should be in total isolation. They should not be allowed to mix with one another. It's absolutely and utterly wrong. We're going to talk to Councillor Marion Jenkins in a moment, for a Shadow Cabinet Minister for Finance, member, I should say, for Finance in Birmingham City Council. First, let's get a voice note from Andy.
Morning, Mike. It's Andy from Birmingham. Hope you're well on this rainy day. Yeah, you're 100% right, mate. Going back to the bin strikes in Birmingham, you're 100% right. So if you drive around a lot of the suburbs of Birmingham, sort of quite tidy. People have probably took their rubbish down the tip like you would do during a strike. But the suburbs, as I can call them, they basically have thrown everything out into the road because they think that there's going to be like somebody like the army or paid contractors in, so they just throw everything out ready, like the dishwater and everything, thinking it's all going to be cleaned up. On another note to that, why can't the government, it's a health hazard, it's a public health hazard, why can't they just get paid contractors now to get in there and clean it up? There's loads of like independent waste contractors, and just do a sweep and clean it all up. Anyway, great show, mate. Bye.
Andy, that's a very good set of questions, and I'm going to put them all to Councillor Marion Jenkins because hopefully we can get those answers that you need. Councillor, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I mean, straightforward questions there from Andy, who's a resident of Birmingham. Why can't the council just organise for somebody other than the people who are on strike to go round and start collecting this rubbish and putting it in the back of a lorry and taking it somewhere?
Yeah, it's a good question, and your caller, I think his name was Ricky, raised a similar point.
Yeah.
You have to remember that there are laws which derived from the EU, but which unfortunately our government never replaced, which means that you can't simply employ people to replace strikers. The council can use existing agency workers who were in place before the strike began, and the council is using crews from other councils, like, for example, Conservative Lichfield is providing crews, but they are collecting rubbish that's on the streets. They are not replacing the work that was being done by the striking bin men. So it's one of the things that generally needs to take place in the UK, is that we need to overhaul our employment legislation, which allows this type of situation to arise and which prevents us doing the sort of things that Ricky, and I think it was Andy, suggested might be done.
Right, because at the end of the day, it is a health hazard. It's no longer just an industrial dispute, if you like. And the people, surely, who live in Birmingham deserve better, don't they?
Absolutely. It's a disastrous situation. It is a health hazard, as you said. You can see from the pictures there just how bad it is. And what you have to bear in mind is that this goes back to the bin strike of 2017.
Yeah.
In order to resolve that, the Labour administration created a new grade for the bin men. Normally, bin men are either grade 2 or the drivers are grade 4. They created this intermediary grade as a way of essentially kicking the can down the road and solving the strike. And we said at the time, if you do this, you will create an equal pay liability, because we have to look back to this crazy equal pay legislation that we have in the UK that dates back to the Blair era, that allows you to compare people doing entirely different jobs. Sure enough, roll it forward 8 years, and here we are now with the equal pay liability that we predicted, a 760 million estimated bill for that. And because they haven't fixed this grading issue, it's been estimated that it is now increasing it up to 14 million a month for every month. That's the equal pay liability.
14 million?
14 million, up to 14 million a month is the additional equal pay liability on top of the 760 million we already have from 2017, and that's because they're not fixing this.
Right.
That's besides all the cost of the clear-up and the issues associated with the bin strike.
That is incredible, isn't it? I mean, so at the moment, as far as we know, there is no end in sight, is there? Because Angela Rayner has been urging for about the last 3 days they should come to a deal, but she doesn't seem to have any other ideas apart from bringing in the army, not to clear the streets, but to kind of advise on some kind of logistics basis. So where do we go now?
Well, I mean, I would be fairly sceptical about bringing in the army. I think that's just optics from the Labour Council and Angela Rayner. They've brought in 3 or 4 guys to help with logistics, and picking up rubbish off the streets isn't the army's sweet spot anyway, is it?
No.
What we need to do, I mean, we've put forward a plan of the 3 things that need to happen straight away. First of all, we have to make sure that those agency workers who are in place and want to go to work can do. I mean, obviously, people have a right to go on strike, they have a right to picket, but they don't have a right to block others who want to go to work from actually doing so. So we have to do that. And also, the council needs to put a time limit on their offer to unite, because the people who were put onto this grade 3, in order to stop the equal pay liability increasing, now have to be moved away from that grade 3 on the bins, and they've been given a range of options that they can accept, which I think are pretty reasonable options. That offer has to be time limited, and if they don't accept it, then I'm afraid redundancy procedures have to follow through, because the council has to take away this grade 3 position, because if they don't, the equal pay liability continues to increase indefinitely.
Yes, and I'm assuming that the bin lorries themselves are owned by the council. They haven't, like, you know, got an outside contractor that runs that particular side of the business. So presumably they could put anybody they want onto those bin lorries. They don't have to be those 17 men who are currently on strike.
They are owned by the council. Yes, this is a in-house service, and many would say there are merits in contracting it out, but for the time being, it's an in-house service.
Yeah.
But as I say, do bear in mind that the EU law that disappointingly we failed to repeal prevents you from recruiting new people to replace striking workers.
Yeah.
As I say, we need an overhaul of employment law in the UK generally, and this is just one of the aspects of it.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, listen, hopefully somebody sorts it out soon, because there's also talk at the moment of it possibly spreading. Unite Union kind of threatening that they might get into other areas with different councils.
Mike, many people are not aware. Just bear in mind that about half the cabinet in Birmingham, half the Labour cabinet that runs Birmingham, are members of Unite.
Yeah.
And the council is in dispute with Unite. So it's a very strange situation.
That is strange. Very strange. And this is why that would explain Angela Rayner's kind of duplicity in the matter as well, because a lot of people were surprised that she was siding with the council over Unite, but that now explains why.
Well, they're in a very difficult position, aren't they? They're members of a union, and they're running a council that is in dispute with that union.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like a Chinese puzzle of some kind, which is very apt for this particular week. But listen, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Myron Jenkins there, Shadow Cabinet Member for Finance at Birmingham City Council. Why on earth can't they just put different people on the back of the bin lorries, get those bin lorries out, start collecting the rubbish? I mean, if all the Birmingham council leaders are members of Unite, maybe there's a special reason why they're not doing that. Stuart says this, Mike, Britain is broken. It took Starmer only 9 months to get back to the 1970s. Welcome to the stench in Birmingham. We have teachers queuing up to strike for pay, steelworkers smelling blood in Scunthorpe, and doctors and nurses warming up. On top of that, we have private businesses going bust with NI increases and net zero, private schools closing and farmers losing their farms, pensioners freezing. Summer of discontent, here we come. And Richie says, Peter Blexley is a top man. He's absolutely right. His rant about the prisons is spot on. Peter should be in charge of the whole of the useless police service we have today. Nowhere near as good as we had in the 1970s. I think that's absolutely right. Coming up, we're going to be talking to Dr. Carol Sikora, Professor Carol Sikora, I should say. He's going to be talking about cancer care, and I'm sure he'll have plenty to say about the state of broken Britain and the NHS. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:37. This from Mark in Lancashire. Morning, Mike. He says, on the bin strikes, it looks to me like idiotic stupidity is on display from the locals. It's also partially to blame. On the piles of rubbish on TV, I've seen kids' toys, furniture, mattresses, etc. There's an emergency crisis, for Christ's sake, so wouldn't you keep all that rubbish at home or until the situation improved? It even looks like some people are just taking advantage of the chaotic situation to fill the street with their rubbish. I'm afraid that's exactly what they're doing, because they see the fact that there's a big pile of rubbish outside, so when you see a big pile of rubbish, you just add more rubbish onto it. It's a sort of human condition, I'm afraid. Let's get a voice note from Kate.
Morning, Mike. Kate from Leeds. Good show. Yeah, I would sack all them dustbin men in Birmingham, and I would set other people on. Or I just think it's disgusting. It's absolutely vile what they're doing. Thanks. Bye.
No problem at all. Thank you very much indeed. Now, just before we speak to Professor Carol Sikora, consultant oncologist, of course, to talk about what's going on with cancer care in the UK, let's have a look at what's going on over in Spain, because we believe Keir Starmer's gone on holiday. They won't tell us where he's gone, but my thinking and my suggestion to you is that he may have popped up in Lanzarote, because they've just had a catastrophic flooding episode. It's the kind of bad luck that follows the Prime Minister around. If you're in Lanzarote, I hope you're not having a terrible time, but there's been heavy rain and ridiculous flooding that happened, if you might remember, happened in Spain last year, and they're having more of it now. There's a river in Spate running very brown down through and under a bridge where it's a lot higher than it should normally be. Also, bad news if he's in Mallorca, because apparently they've run out of Guinness. So Spain, not the place to be for your Easter holidays. But if you are there, let us know what it's like. Let us know what's going on. You might want to stay here, where it's also raining and is likely to rain for most of the week. Professor Carol Sikora is here, though. Carol, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm sorry to say that we appear to be talking, though, about, once again, cancer care being at breaking point in this country, despite what Wes Streeting, I suppose, would tell us, that he's reforming the NHS as fast as he can. He doesn't seem to be doing much with cancer care.
I think the trouble is cancer care reflects the totality of the NHS in that you can't sort of separate it. People have symptoms, some have cancer, many don't have cancer. So the whole system has to be more efficient if we're going to get good cancer care. And that's the problem. It's like the litmus test of the whole NHS. And we are failing in terms of delays. It's not the treatment. The oncologists, the skills are there, the doctors, the nurses, the health professionals do a great job. The equipment's great. The chemotherapy's fine. It's simply we don't have the resources to do things quickly in the diagnostic phase.
Yes, from what you've said to me before, and we've been talking about this for many years, it's the moving of patients that seems to be the problem, doesn't it? From the initial diagnosis to the referral to the next stage of treatment to the next stage of treatment. You know, it seems to be that the hold-ups are all in those little loops somehow.
It is, Mike. It's like a busy airport on a bank holiday. You just get serial delays. So you get through one, and then you join another queue. And, you know, if you're efficient, you just press a button on something and you get there. But we don't have that system.
No, quite. And I mean, it shows, I suppose, that there's a general malaise inside of the whole health service in general, doesn't there? I mean, we were reading this morning in the Telegraph, NHS has admitted to fast-tracking ethnic minority staff into senior jobs. And it's not for me about whether or not people are from ethnic minorities. This says to me that they're basically fast-tracking people into jobs that they're not qualified to do. And that seems to be quite an easy explanation as to why management in the NHS is not particularly good.
I think the problem is doctors have lost control. So there's no one in charge of an individual patient. There's a series of health professionals, and people have lost the plot of it.
Yeah.
We've got to get back to having people in charge. And the report in the Lancet Oncology today that says how bad it is really points to having decent management in charge, basically.
Yeah. I mean, because that surely is route one and sort of lesson one for any kind of reform of the NHS. I mean, Wes Streeting is saying that he's reforming the NHS. I've had a sort of personal crusade to deny the fact that they're removing, to deny the fact that they're reducing waiting lists, because in my view, what's obviously happening is, from anecdotal evidence that I'm getting here, people are being moved off of waiting lists and having their appointments cancelled and then being put on another waiting list. They've just announced they're going to do away with 300,000 names on waiting lists because that will help cut them down, but they're not actually seeing more people.
No, and that's the problem. You can fiddle with the figures as much as you like, but unless you become more efficient and actually see more patients in the time available for health professionals, you're not actually doing anything. You know, I'm sure around 10% of people on waiting lists have already died, not necessarily for what they were waiting for, but they're elderly and they've passed, and that's what happens. So one can get rid of one can say or claim one's reduced the list, but that's an artificial way of doing it.
Yes. And to come back to the cancer case, I mean, gross mismanagement is only going to be fixed if you get rid of the management, isn't it?
Yes, the bureaucracy with NHS England's going, which is great. Wes Streeting announced that a month ago. And I think we need to get people responsible for the task. I mean, you know, a manager of the supermarket is responsible for that supermarket. And that's the sort of person we need, someone that's responsible, that gets throughput of patients in an efficient way through the diagnostic phase. And, you know, as Stalin said, you can't make an omelette without cracking eggs, and that's what we've got to do in the NHS.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Professor Carol Sikora, thank you very much indeed, consultant oncologist. It's not a great line there, Carol, so I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, though, for talking to us. It's a very important story. It's a very important situation. And if you are currently awaiting cancer care, by all means do get in touch. If you're awaiting any kind of care, get in touch, because, again, I've been proved right about this, because it now looks as though Wes Streeting is simply massaging the figures. When he says we're reducing waiting times, when Keir Starmer says we're reducing waiting times, you know, there's not so many people now waiting for operations and procedures on the NHS as there were under the Tories. It's complete and utter bunkum. It's rubbish, right? 300,000 people have just been removed. Carol Sikora just said about 10% of people waiting, and that's about 7.5 million, are probably dead. That's 700,000 people who are probably no longer in requirement of any NHS intervention because they've died waiting. That's the reality of what's going on. Sue's on the subject of double-barrelled names says, typically you take the first part from your father and then the first part from your mother. It was always like that in countries like Spain, but these days you are allowed to change order. Women changing their surname each time they get married is a seriously bad idea. It generates all sorts of identification troubles, especially abroad. Are you going to change your passport, driving licence, birth certificate each time you get married and divorced? Well, I know women who have been in that situation and have decided not to bother. So sometimes they stick with the name of the married person that they're no longer married to, only because it's simpler, because they don't have to change credit cards, don't have to change passports, don't have to change everything in all of that. Kevin in Stafford says, I look forward to your conversation with Julia just before 10 on double-barrelled names. Well, I may well ask her about it if we have time. We don't always have time. There's not always a lot of time there. Let's get a voice note from Paul.
I'm in Sheffield. I don't really know what you're on about, though, with this strike. I can't see out. I'm always getting stuck in traffic because of bin men. That's something that I've definitely seen. I can't see no rubbish knocking about me, so I don't know where this is coming from. It might be a select few people, some at poshins up top of Sheffield, but for us peasants down here, there's no, mate, it's all right. So anyway, wicked show, mate, and I hope you're all well.
Paul, good to hear from you. Thanks very much indeed. It's always good to hear from people on the ground. It may well be a bit like in certain parts of Birmingham. People tell me, we had a reporter in Selly Oak where it's as bad as it can possibly be. But we hear from other people in Birmingham where bits of Birmingham are actually fine because the residents are taking their rubbish to the tip. I think where it's terribly bad in Birmingham, it's because of multiple occupancy housing, where people are like students are living, other people there, maybe new immigrants are coming into the area, they don't have cars, they can't take the rubbish anywhere, so it just builds up. And maybe, Paul, you're right, maybe it is the poshans that are suffering, but there apparently, this is according to a report in the Daily Telegraph, parts of Sheffield where they're not getting their bins collected. But listen, I stand corrected if that's wrong. I'm more than happy to clarify that, but we'll see. Chris in Croydon says, Mike, this is why you don't appease the unions and why Labour, by doing it with the NHS staff, have set a precedent and caused a massive problem for themselves for the future. When will these bloody people learn? And Paula says the council tax in Hillingdon has gone up and now they're considering a £75 charge to collect the garden waste. Well, apparently a lot of people pay a charge for garden waste as well. But Phil in Coventry says, I'm not in Birmingham, obviously, but Coventry is just as bad. There's rubbish everywhere. Anyway, now Labour has taken us back to the 70s. I'm glad I kept my flares, high-heeled boots as status quo records. Yeah, rocket all over the world. 7:47.
When atrocities of this scale, I mean, imagine like the appalling Manchester Arena attack times hundreds, that when that happens, so many people in our society are not on the side of the victims, but are on the side of the death cult, are chanting support for Hamas and Hezbollah on Britain's streets. Why within days were hundreds of thousands of our fellow Brits supporting the people who were the rapists, the jihadists, the beheaders?
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 7:50. Incredible how fast the time goes on this show. Morning, Mike. Love and joy, channeling the Blue Origin flight. I'm sitting here in Birmingham, full of joy, listening to Talk. Margaret, well, I've got good news for you, I'm afraid, because we're going to speak to a man that knows a thing or two about space. Greg Smye-Rumsby. He's our favourite astronomer, and he talks to us an awful lot about space flight and about what's going on up there in the big wide world above the space. Greg, a very good morning to you. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
Funnily enough, we've been talking about double-barrelled names, and you've got one. So is your double-barrelled name from your, forgive me for intruding on your private life, but is your double-barrelled name from your parents, or did you sort of find it from your marriage?
No, from my parents back in 1949.
All right.
A few years before I was born.
So you're proper double-barrelled. You haven't sort of invented it.
Yeah, a proper double-barrelled name.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Well, let me play you a bit of Aisha Bowe, who's a NASA engineer, on her experience up in space. For 4 minutes, this was.
I just feel a renewed connection to everything in life and where we are, and I can't wait to go back out there and pour what I've learned into the world.
You have given so much to so many, and I know there are a lot of people watching right now, some young boys and some young girls that are inspired constantly by you. What would you like to say to them?
Dream it, plan it, and go and do it. I never really thought I could go to space, although I really wanted to go. And today just confirmed that dreams are real, and sometimes reality is wrong.
I'm not sure about reality being wrong. I mean, surely reality's a wonderful thing, and that's what she just experienced up in space, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. It's the famous Kármán line, which is 100 kilometres above the Earth's surface. If you go beyond the Kármán line, which they did, they just tippy-toed into it, which means they did enter what we would classify as space, but they are technically still inside the Earth's atmosphere, thin as it is. It's an arbitrary line, but do they qualify as astronauts on a basically a rocket-powered helter-skelter ride? I'm not so sure. And I think that there's a slightly glib aspect of some of the comments they were making, especially in light of the present state of the American government, which is really wrecking the middle class and the working class families. And I just think looking down on the earth like that and having that moment of wow is not necessarily the answer. But anyway. It is a bit self-indulgent, isn't it? I was going to ask you whether, serious astronomers like yourself would encourage this kind of space tourism. It's not really space tourism. I mean, the flight was meant to be 11 minutes into space. I think they spent 4 minutes in space, and they've all come down with Katy Perry, who apparently sang a song while she was up there about what a wonderful world it was. Basically having had some kind of, incredible experience and saying that, it's changed their life. I mean, it's a bit like going on Concorde, isn't it, really? Yes, it is. It's a flight of fancy, and if you can afford it, yeah, OK, good luck to you. But don't imagine for 1 minute that you actually are an astronaut. Astronauts train. They have got fantastic jobs up on the International Space Station, and the Chinese on their Tiangong-1 space station as well. It's all happening. I don't mind it happening, but I think there needs to be a reality check to exactly what the space tourists are doing compared to professional astronauts. They're a completely different thing. Well, they really are, because, I mean, they say that they experience, weight, the zero gravity and all of that. Would they have experienced that? I mean, they said that they floated around for a minute or so. Yeah, you can experience that if you jump off the last 3 steps of your steps in the house, your staircase. Because as you fall, you instantly reach what we call 0G. So you're falling at the same rate as the Earth's gravity. They had 4 minutes, which is correct. The flight lasts a little over 10 minutes. So it's 5 minutes up, and then you do a little bit of sort of turnaround and then hurtle back towards the Earth's surface. And you hope that everything works to slow you down because you're coming back quite fast. Yes. But it is literally an up and a down. It's a very short flight. 4 minutes of weightlessness. I don't know, what would I do in 4 minutes? I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose they wouldn't let you on. It was a female-only flight, of course. I mean, if they'll do a male-only flight, I mean, I'm not in favour of male-only or female-only anything, really, but they've sort of made their point, I suppose. What about the difference between Bezos's rockets and Elon Musk's rockets? Because Musk is incredibly great at bringing rockets back to Earth and actually capturing them, which is quite a remarkable piece of technology, it seems to me.
It is very, very different. Elon Musk, for all his political problems, is a brilliant engineer and a brilliant businessman when it comes to engineering and technology.
Yeah.
And Starship is making headlong leaps into the future, and it's going to bring us with it. And it means that we can go and not only go to the moon and Mars, but also to mine the asteroids and bring back some new rare earths, new minerals and stuff that we can use for our future technologies. So in a way, it's just brilliant. Jeff Bezos is not in that arena, although his new rocket should help us out, but it's not fully reusable, unlike the Starship, which is fully reusable.
Right. And some astronauts, proper astronauts, I suppose, who have been up in space for long periods of time, have often reported that, you know, things happen to their bodies change, you know, they maybe age differently or something like that. I presume if you're only up there for a couple of minutes, it does not really make any difference.
No, it doesn't make any difference. The people on board the International Space Station, there's an international agreement that the maximum length of time you can stay is 6 months.
Yeah.
There have been a few of the bending of rules for specific reasons. One case in point, of course, was the 8 months spent by the 2 astronauts that were stranded up there. They weren't really stranded. It's just a reshuffling of how you can dock onto the International Space Station. There aren't docking ports just available ready for any flight. They have to be made ready. But anyway.
But they were rescued by Elon Musk again, weren't they? He managed to send somebody up to actually get them, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess nothing like this is going to happen on our shores, is it? I mean, we're not going to see any, you know, celebrity rocket ships leaving from Britain anytime soon.
Oh yes, of course. Up in Scotland, they've got a huge launch site getting ready to be built. I think space tourism will be everywhere. But whether we think it's a complete and utter waste and not so good on the environment, because rockets are not clean things.
I didn't want to mention that. That's obviously another bugbear for people.
Yeah, if we're going into space for a purpose that will benefit us overall, then maybe we can sort of bend the rules a bit. But just flippantly getting on board a rocket and burning up all that fuel and doing quite a lot of damage to the Earth's atmosphere, microscopic as it is tiny in proportion. But if you had lots and lots and lots of space tourism, it wouldn't be that tiny.
No, quite. Maybe Ed Miliband should try it out. I mean, I'd be in favour of sending him up into space. That would be fine. Absolutely no problem. Greg, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Greg Rumsby, space expert from astronomynow.com, and also a man with a proper double-barreled name. It didn't invent it. It was his parents' actual name. Let's get a countdown, though, because Blue Origin is the name of the voyage that they all went on. 5 women, divine femininity. Check it out.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay! It worked.
New Shepard has cleared the tower.
It looks like something out of that, what do you call it, movie? You know, the space movie with the Emperor Ming in it. You know, what was it called? Flash Gordon. It looks like the Flash Gordon rocket, which is quite phallic, really, given that it's about divine femininity. Anyway, I shouldn't be talking about that at this time in the morning. Let's get a voice note from Joanne.
Morning, Mike. Joanne from Norfolk. So I've been tackling a health problem for the last 5 years nearly and been pushed from pillar to post, IBS, other issues. So I had an op last week, which apparently they've done all they could do. They couldn't find anything else wrong. So I've been referred on for further tests to see another consultant. Spoke to the hospital about that last week insofar as how long before I get an appointment, bearing in mind I've already been in the system with my issues for 5 years. 51 weeks! 51 weeks! So if I was at death's door, I'm going to be dead. I'm going to be dead. So, yeah, that's how they're massaging the figures and that's how they're getting people off the waiting lists. Great show. Thanks, Mike.
Joanne, absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? 51 weeks. Why don't you just call it a year and stop pretending? Bill in Cheshire says, Katy Perry in space for 4 minutes. Any chance of Keir Starmer getting up for 4 years? That'd be good, wouldn't it? Well, he's gone on a holiday somewhere. I don't think it's in space. I'm not sure where it is. If you spot him, of course, do let us know. This is Morning Glory. We'll see you after the news. We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the Pip Parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide ride surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the scouts to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
We're everywhere.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 2 minutes past 8, very nearly 3 minutes past 8. We're getting closer and closer to the witching hour. We're also getting very close to Easter bank holiday weekend. It's Good Friday coming up, of course, which is going to be a massive traffic jam apparently, and it's going to be not very nice weather. Raining all over the place. It's raining in Spain, by the way, as well. The rain in Spain stays mainly in Lanzarote at the moment. There's an awful lot of flooding going on. If you're stuck down there, do let us know. Let us know what it's like, how they're coping with it. Coming up later on in this show, Robert Jenrick is going to join us, the Shadow Justice Minister. He's going to be talking to us about the state of our prisons, because he alerted everybody only a week or two ago about the state of the prisons in this country, overrun by Muslim gangs, occupied by people like the Muslim Brotherhood, putting prison officers in danger. And lo and behold, what would you know, just over the weekend, it turned out that one of those dangerous prisoners, the brother of the Beatty man who blew up Manchester Arena 8 years ago, very soon coming up to an anniversary, decided to take it upon himself to use the kitchen in which he was allowed to work to furnish 2 knives out of some baking trays, stab 2 prison officers to within an inch of their lives, and throw melted butter, burning butter, which is as hot as burning oil, over the face of a female prison guard. And now people, of course, are calling for all sorts of isolation to be given to him, to the miscreant, to the monster, to the terrorist, and asking questions conversations about how we could have got this far and got this bad in running our prisons in this country and putting people in there who should never, ever be allowed out of isolation. It's as simple as that, and that's what a lot of people are calling for. We're going to be talking about China. There's the warnings now about the steel crisis in this country. Has Labour really rescued British steel, or are they still literally just treading water and pretending to do it? 3 billion litres of water, speaking of which, are lost into the ground every single day. We're talking about Keir Starmer. He's off on holiday. We don't know exactly where he's gone, but he's not giving Angela Rayner permission to run the country in his absence. We're also talking about double-barrelled names, because an awful lot of women now apparently are not taking their husband's name when they marry them. Let's get a voice note from Lisa.
Hi Mike, it's Lisa from Durham here. I'm a Johnson and I married a Johnson, saving loads of money. Didn't have to change my passport, didn't have to change my driver's licence, didn't have to change any banking details. So, bit of advice. Look for somebody with the same name. Great show.
That's a good idea. What a great idea. Or you could have just called yourself Lisa Johnson, I suppose. Who was that runner, the sprinter, who sounded like Johnson Thompson? Sounded like she married a Johnson Thompson. I don't know. Anyway, you see where I'm going. It's 5 minutes past 8. We've got lots to talk about, including, of course, FTSE having its best day since the tariffs began. The bad news for Dan Hodges, who's coming next. This is Morning Glory. And of course, then there's the bin strikes as well, which are seemingly possibly going to spread, because Birmingham still hasn't been solved, and there's now talk of possibly Cambridgeshire being next, and maybe Sheffield as well. And we've already had one call from Sheffield to say there's no bin strikes here. Well, you never know. And on the basis of what we were talking about with the NHS as well, Carol says this: Mike, I started my lung cancer journey on the 3rd of January and I'm still waiting to start any treatment. Every day is like a month, and it's getting to the stage that I'm wondering if I should not go for any treatment and just enjoy the time I have left. I don't blame the frontline staff of the NHS, and I feel bad having to keep ringing them up for any news. I love talk. It keeps me going. You guys are amazing. Thank you for all your hard work. Well, Carol, listen, my sympathies go to you. And this is the problem, as Carol Sakura was telling us. Basically, you know, the cancer treatment in this country is as good as any treatment in the world once you get to it. But it's getting to it that is the problem. And there's various hoops you have to jump through to get from sort of, you know, stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4. And unfortunately, that can coincide with the way that they actually diagnose your cancer. And it's a problem. And Wes Streeting talks a good game, but nothing's really improving in the NHS. And all of the talk of, you know, waiting lists coming down is all total and utter nonsense. Let's talk to Dan Hodges, commentator at the Mail on Sunday. Dan, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Interesting comments in the Sun this morning. Britain is broken, they say, not just because people think it is, but some of the polling that they've done, and it's a surveyation poll of a couple of thousand plus people, so it's an accurate one, or it's worth certainly paying attention to. It's quite bad news for Labour and Keir Starmer, and quite good news for reform, it would seem.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not telling us anything we didn't really know, and I think we've touched on this before. I mean, you were talking about the bin strike, you were talking about issues in the NHS. I don't quite agree with you. I think there are some improvements starting to be seen, but obviously there's a massive sort of legacy of neglect still within the NHS. But more broadly, I think that's right. I think the issue is people think and have thought for a long time Britain just isn't working.
Yeah.
And in particular, just basic public services are no longer being provided. And you're absolutely right. I've been saying this for a good part of a month now. We've got local elections coming up in a few weeks. We've got a by-election coming up in a few weeks, and reform are absolutely going to clean up, because the basic perception amongst the British people is they booted out the Tories. They did so because Labour promised change, and they've seen scant evidence of that change. And that's why Labour is about to get a really big shellacking, as are the Tories, when Britain next goes to the polls.
Yeah. I mean, I've been seeing stories, as I'm sure you have, of people saying out there on the doorstep from Labour canvassing points of view, they've never seen such hostility towards the government. And I think that's the thing that's shocking, really, and should be very worrying for Keir Starmer and his government, is that the sort of the dissent from the voting levels that they got back in July, and we know that it was a relatively thin majority, although it was a very big majority. But, you know, the people who voted for them are even sort of running away in the opposite direction. I mean, when you look back at the 2024 pie chart that they've got in the Sun here, 39% Labour, 18% Reform, 12% of that has now completely shifted, so that Reform are on 30 and Labour have gone down to 27. I mean, it's almost a direct, you know, so it's not like Reform are just nicking votes from the Tories now. They're stealing them from Labour.
No, absolutely. They're taking them from across the board, and that was always going to be the case if Labour couldn't demonstrate, as I said, that they were going to be different from the Tories and different from what we've seen over the last 14 years. Now, we all know the issues that Labour inherited, but Labour have made some massive, massive political own goals. The biggest of which, and we've talked about it before, is its attempt to basically deal with the crisis facing the country by effectively deciding to cut further and cut faster, particularly in areas such as welfare, disability benefit, pensions, things like that.
Yeah.
And the reality is, what people see is they just don't think that's fair. And, you know, I've been saying this till I'm blue in the face, that the British people are sick of being told again and again, times are going to be hard. When times are hard, we are going to place the burden on the shoulders of those who can least afford it, as opposed to those who are best placed to afford it. And, you know, underpinning all of this are the economic decisions that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have made, which are frankly proving disastrous at the moment. I mean, Rachel Reeves, having started off from a position in which I thought a policy was the correct one of attempting to protect public services, has now said in terms, forget that, I am simply going to go for growth in a way an old-fashioned Tory would go for growth. Now, that would be fine if she was able to deliver it, but she's not being able to deliver it. We had, in fairness to her, we had some improved growth figures last month. Most analysts I saw are very, very sceptical of those figures. We'll have to see if there's any revision to those figures, but the trend is clear. And also, you know, at the top of this programme, you announced it. We've had worse than expected figures this morning in terms of wages, which Labour had hung a lot on.
Well, they had. I mean, that's what I was going to say. They keep saying, you know, one of the positives that they preach, and every time you see Keir Starmer doing it, you kind of cringe, because I've always said the only reason actually you're going to tell me that wages are going up faster than inflation is because of all the public sector pay rises you've given. But even that has now been dwarfed, presumably, by everything else.
Yeah, because we've been told our wages are going up. Essentially, the cost of living crisis is being dealt with. But as we said, the poor figures today, every analyst is saying they are predicting increases in inflation as we go through the year. Obviously, we've got this, you know, we've got the Trump trade tariff crisis coming down the track. A lot of these issues, not a lot of them, some of these issues, in fairness, are outside Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer's control. But the reality is, people aren't going to accept that. They're not going to accept, after Labour in opposition, telling the world and his wife, or the world and her husband, that things would be so much better if Labour got in, there was a fully costed plan, etc., etc., etc. They're not going to listen to excuses, and Labour is going to pay a very heavy political price next month.
And also, you can't keep telling people that things are improving when they're really not. And I think that's partly why people feel, you know, as aggrieved as they do, because they look around and they see the sorts of people who are doing well in this country, and it's either the very super rich who are, you know, always going to be very super rich, but also some of the people coming into this country illegally who are getting help when ordinary people are struggling and suffering. And it's like the old saying, don't pee down my back and tell me it's raining. You know, and every time Keir Starmer goes out there to make a speech, he says, you know, we're putting money back into the pockets of working people. And working people are going, no, you're not. That's just not happening. You know, I'm worse off. The council tax has gone up. My electricity bill's gone up. My water bill's gone up. You know, I haven't got more money than I had before you were in power. And whether it's fair or not, he's getting the blame for it.
Absolutely. And but I think the key thing, again, which I simply cannot understand, we have seen, obviously, a global economic crisis. I mean, we've had obviously you and I disagree maybe on the extent of it, but we've seen the experts saying how this is, going to have an potentially unprecedented impact on the British economy, the Trump tariffs. We've also, as I said, seen Rachel Reeves telling everybody growth is going to be.
But this is what I said to you last week. She's already crashed the economy, and we can't get much worse.
But let's wait and see. But the key thing is, I don't understand what the government's actual response to this crisis has been. There was a little bit of tinkering in relation to when everybody had to sort of buy electric cars. I think I saw a press release saying there had been some sort of minor change to government procurement rules towards enable them to buy British a bit more. And that seems to have been it. And just the government's approach seems to be to pretend nothing is happening, and as you said, and everything's right. And it palpably isn't right.
Yeah. And they've gone very quiet on all sorts of things that they were making an awful lot of noise about. Like, for example, what's happening in Ukraine, the coalition of the willing, because it's all kind of stalled in the White House and nothing's really changing and nothing's really moving, and Putin's just kind of gone, here's two fingers up to you, I'll just start sending missiles into buildings again. Starmer's gone very quiet because I think he's terrified of upsetting Donald Trump, and I think that puts him in an even worse position than he was before.
Well, he certainly is terrified of upsetting Donald Trump. That's, and obviously they're putting huge emphasis on trying to secure this trade deal. One of the other reasons why Keir Starmer has gone quiet on Ukraine, though, is that there was an acceptance and I think a realization in Downing Street that there was so much focus on Ukraine, so much focus on foreign policy issues, that people were, obviously we had the big announcement, all this additional money is going to be going to defence, that there was a realisation that actually a lot of people, again, the sort of people who you were talking about in that poll, the sort of people who were speaking to Labour MPs on the doorsteps, was saying, hang on a second, how come we can spend all this money on drones for Ukraine, but we can't look after our own pensioners and our own disabled people? Yeah. So that's part of the politics of that. But the reality is, Keir Starmer is boxed in. I mean, we in Britain have not been, I mean, this is his perception, it's right, we haven't been as isolated internationally since the 1950s. We got a situation where obviously we voluntarily severed our relationship with the European Union. Yeah. Trump's basically sticking two fingers up to us in the same way he is to the rest of the world. Putin's represents a real and present danger and an existential threat to Western Europe. And we've seen the last few weeks and certainly the last few days how China's acting towards the UK.
Although, of course, the Russian ambassador was talking to the BBC on Sunday morning, and he said it was absolute nonsense to say that Britain was under any kind of threat from Russia.
Yeah, well, he would say that, wouldn't he? I mean, he's not going to say, "We're coming to get you guys."
Of course he would. No, I mean, if you were a hawkish Russian, you would say, obviously, we are watching what Britain does very carefully. We're not going to make any threats now. But he wouldn't say we're not going to. It's rubbish to say there's any kind of threat, would he?
Well, no. I mean, basically, I don't think he's overtly at this stage going to go and say, oh, yeah, you've got to be really worried because actually, all that stuff my president's been talking about going back to a greater Russia and the Russia of the Tsar, we're actually going to do that. I mean, the point is that the Russians are very happy at the moment. I mean, you're talking about, Starmer not wanting to not wanting to upset Trump. I mean, as we can see, Trump is now simply just bending over backwards to appease Putin. I mean, we had the situation where Ukraine, was attacked a couple of days ago. Another 30 people dead. What does Trump do? He turns around and he blames Zelensky. I mean, there's this pretense that Trump was acting as some sort of honest broker, the peace president. He was trying to get. I mean, that's all gone out the window now. I mean, it's quite clear. I was saying about this yesterday. I genuinely don't understand why now. I don't understand why Trump is so beholden to Putin, is so terrified of upsetting Putin, is so
Well, Keir
terrified.
Starmer doesn't agree with you, because otherwise he would be saying the same thing, wouldn't he?
No, I mean, Keir Starmer's terrified of both of them. You know, Keir Starmer's scared of Trump.
What's the point of being Prime Minister of Britain if you can't have a view on what is supposed to be the biggest international crisis in the world right now, currently?
That's the world that Keir Starmer inherited. I mean, that's diplomacy. I mean,
he didn't inherit it, no. But surely, if he's got a right to be, a powerful member of the UN Security Council, why is he not leading from the front instead of hiding behind, somebody's skirt? Because that's what he's doing. He's so terrified. He's completely useless. You've got to admit that.
No, I mean, I think
you've got more leadership qualities than him.
Well, thank you very much, mate.
No,
the reality is, Keir Starmer. We've just talked about the economic situation. Keir Starmer desperately wants this trade deal for economic reasons. He has taken a lead in relation to standing up to Putin with this.
No, but he looks weak, though, doesn't he? Because he hasn't stood up to Putin. He talks about the coalition of the willing. He got one country, basically France, to agree to it, and nobody else. He's got no capability militarily. If he's lucky, he'll be able to put 10,000 troops into a 30,000 troop, group of people who Putin will completely swamp with his 700,000 troops. There's no point to it.
Look, you say he's been weak. I mean, my view is he's trying to be pragmatic. Where I would agree with you, though, I do think he is now starting to run out of road. He's attempted to position himself as this bridge between Europe and the United States.
And that
he's
hasn't worked.
Build himself as this bridge between Zelensky and Trump. The reality is Trump isn't interested in the bridge. No. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about Europe. He doesn't really care about us. There's some more stuff today about some nice warm words from J.D. Vance about the importance of the relationship and culturally.
It's all cobblers, isn't
it? Trump wants tea. Trump definitely wants tea with the king. He wants to put that in his scrapbook. But that aside, we've seen this with the fact that we had the same tariffs imposed on us as the Penguins did. This is the idea of a special relationship is gone. It's dead. It's for the birds. Now, Keir Starmer's been trying to navigate that. I think, as I said, his capacity to do that is basically coming to the end now.
Yeah, I don't know what he's for. And I think what happens after May the 1st is going to be very interesting. We'll talk about it again, I'm sure. Dan, good to speak to you. Dan Hodges, commentator at the Mail on Sunday. Like me, shares the view that Starmer's getting it all wrong. And that Labour are going to get a complete and utter tonking at the elections, and local elections in May. Let's get a voice note from Chris.
Good morning, Mike. Chris from Barnsley. Just chiming in on this bin man thing. They've not technically been on strike in our area, but since the new year, there was at one point a period of about 3 weeks where the bins didn't get emptied. And I don't know why. So there was that snow at the start of January that put them 3 weeks behind when the snow had gone by the Thursday, which is our bin day. There's 14 houses on our street, plus 2 in the nursing home at the end of the road, so that's 16. At one point, Mike, I swear, honestly, there was 48 bins on the street, 3 from each household, and they were just sat there. But the council were quick to take the new payment on the 4th of January. All the best, Mike.
Oh yeah, they'll never cease to take the payment on the beginning of the year. They absolutely take it as fast as you can do it. By the way, we're trying to work out where Keir Starmer's gone on holiday, and not for any national security reason. We're not trying to track him down or anything like that. But we might get another clue here, because you know what he's like. Everywhere he goes, there's a disaster. He might be in Costa Blanca, which has apparently been rocked by an earthquake this morning. Terrifying tremors have shaken entire buildings in a Spanish holiday resort there. Residents and Brits described being almost thrown out of bed when the tremors hit just after midnight. So, I mean, maybe that's where he's gone. Captain Disaster, Captain Calamity. Stuart says this morning, Mike, Britain is broken. The last few times I've been to the Co-op, it's virtually empty. There is no one out shopping because the prices are completely and utterly crazy. Well, this is the problem. People can't afford to go out. That's for sure. And talking about the NHS, Anne says this: Mike, I'm currently having chemotherapy for breast cancer. From diagnosis to surgery was 4 weeks, followed by chemotherapy. This is in the northeast, and I really can't fault the treatment and care received. Well, Anne, very happy for you. Delighted that you're getting the treatment that you need, and that, I think, is probably going to be more unusual than most cases, because Andy from Knott says 3 years ago I had prostate cancer. It was treated with radiotherapy. 2 months ago the symptoms had returned, identical to 3 years ago. I saw my GP, who would not do a blood test because it's not due until the end of April. So I've been waiting 2 months for the blood test, which will be a week on Thursday. In the meantime, who knows how bad things are getting? That's how they keep the numbers low. They refuse to listen to patients. And I'm afraid that's more likely to be the story for a lot of people than not. We've got more of those coming in and more of those messages that I will read out. Coming up next, though, Ross Clark is going to join us. He's written a column in The Sun today about the British Steel scenario and the fiasco that is the situation regarding whether or not the government is going to own this company or whether the Chinese are. And he's basically calling Britain a laughingstock. This is Talk.
Instead of being upfront with the British people about the identity of the individual that killed those children, and we now discover that they were killed in the most brutal of circumstances. I think one of the girls was stabbed 125 times. 125 times. Just consider the violent nature of the individual required, obviously, to kill a child, but to stab 125 times and then attempt to take her head off.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 28 minutes past 8. The Sun front page this morning says Britain is broken. Lots and lots of people, a shocking 66% of them, think the country is heading in the wrong direction. It's exclusive by Harry Cole. We'll be talking to him later on in the show as well. We're going to also be talking to Ross Clark, who's got a big column on page 10 today about what's going on with Britain's industrial power vis-à-vis what happened in Scunthorpe over the last few days and over the weekend, where the government supposedly rescued British steel. It remains to be seen whether that rescue is actually going to happen. Great show, Mike, says John. I was in Spoons at 7:30 last night and there were only 6 people in there. We know the country's in trouble when people can't even afford to go to Spoons. I know, that's absolutely right. If you can't get a few people going into Wetherspoons for the night, you're really in trouble. Hi, Mike. I see Birmingham Council has gone back to the 3 R's, rubbish, rats and rises in council tax, says Marcus in Birmingham. And Ian, on the subject of Katy Perry in space, says, famously they say that in space no one can hear you scream. That's just been disproved. Yeah, very true. Let's talk to Ross Clark. Very good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Mike.
First question, I don't know if you know the answer to this. I asked this question of a Labour cabinet minister yesterday and he wasn't able to answer me. Do we know yet whether the coal that's supposed to be powering up these blast furnaces in Scunthorpe has actually arrived yet from that ship in Japan? Because until it does, we're not even sure that the furnaces are going to keep blasting, are we?
Well, as far as I understand, the ship was sitting off the coast of Humberside waiting for the bill to be paid, and yes. Angela Rayner now tells us that the government has paid the bill, so hopefully the coal will arrive.
Well, that would be nice, because apparently I'm told as well that if the coal doesn't arrive and if the furnaces are actually sort of turned off, they'll never be relit.
Yeah, the thing about a blast furnace is it needs to be kept alight, and if it cools down, then the slag hardens, and basically that's the end of the blast furnace. So, I mean, it really is critical that this furnace is kept alight and that the coal does arrive.
Right. And you start your column today with the words, if only Britain had its own coal reserves.
Well, exactly. Isn't it embarrassing? I've got a country which was the original industrial power, which started the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
150 years ago, we produced 40% of the world's steel, and now we're reduced to the government scrabbling around to save this blast furnace. And I mean, the irony is that for the past year, the government, and before that, the previous government and the Labour in opposition, are all telling us that this was obsolete technology. We weren't going to have blast furnaces. We're going to change over to what they call electric arc furnaces, which don't actually produce virgin steel. They're only useful for recycling steel.
Yes.
And the blast furnaces were going to be closed. And money was chucked at the steel industry to undertake this conversion. But now the government seems to have come round to realising that perhaps it's not a good idea after all to lose our virgin steel industry, and hence this mad scramble.
Yeah, absolutely, and we still don't really know if it's actually going to end up working out. Ross, it's a great column. We've got to cut you short, I'm afraid, because we're really, really short of time this day, but thank you very much indeed. Ross Clark, page 10 of The Sun. Once Britain was the world's preeminent industrial power, now we are just a laughing stock, which kind of concurs with what's on the front pages of The Sun this morning, which say that Britain is in fact broken. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Minister. He's going to be telling us why he thinks that we have to radically and completely overhaul the prison system in this country, apropos of what happened over the weekend with that terrorist attacking prison officers. I've been asked to point out that they should be called prison officers, not guards, not wardens. We are professionals. Please call us prison officers. I'll do my best. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. It's 8:32.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:34. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. And I'm delighted to say Robert Jenrick has joined us. Robert, very good morning to you. Welcome back.
Good morning. Good to be on the show.
Shadow Justice Secretary. I mean, I was very much in support of you a couple of weeks ago when you, I don't know if I could call it a campaign, but you put out on your social media that there's a real problem in the prisons of this country, that an awful lot of Muslim gangs seem to have taken control of many parts of them, Muslim Brotherhood people, all sorts of terrible stories of how intimidating it is. We've seen a story, I think, today that more and more members of the prison population are Muslim. I think it's 45%, many of them converting while they're in there. And as if that wasn't warning enough, we saw this story at the weekend. Hashim Abedi, who helped in the Manchester attack and is doing 55 years in a prison up in the northeast, attacks prison officers, and they're lucky to be alive, basically.
Yeah, there's a real problem now in our prisons that people have tried to sweep under the carpet for too long. And on Saturday, you saw one of the most dangerous men in Britain, one of the terrorists behind the Manchester Arena bombing, attacking brutally 3 brave prison officers. It was frankly ridiculous that this man had access to materials that could be used to create weapons, to boiling oil that he used to attack these prison officers. And obviously my thoughts are with the officers and their families. But there's a broader question now which needs to be answered, which is the rule of Islamist extremist gangs within our prisons. And many governors and the Ministry of Justice have just allowed this to happen. They've appeased these terrorists and Islamist gangs for far too long, and they've got to get a grip now, frankly. As you said in your introduction, there are prisons like HMP Whitemore where 45% of the prisoners are now identifying as Muslim, and most of those have converted whilst they've been in prison. Often they've been forcibly converted by gangs like the so-called Brotherhood, who do so on fear of flogging, and it's a kind of modern protection racket. But of course, some of these people will then go back out into wider society having been radicalised and pose a real danger to members of the public. And whilst they're in prison, this is a real danger to prison officers. And we should always be putting the safety of prison officers above the so-called welfare of the criminals.
And so does that mean that you've effectively got British prisons which are kind of recruitment sergeants, if you like, for jihadis?
Well, potentially, yes. You know? You're seeing thousands of people who were not Muslim before they went into prison, forcibly converted whilst they're in there for fear for their own safety. And then the prison itself changing beyond all recognition. So you've now got evidence of the diet being dictated by so-called emirs, people who rule the roost in the prison.
Sharia courts.
Sharia courts operating in the prisons, and weak governors stepping back and allowing these gangs to take control of their prisons. So I think enough is enough. The governors have got to step up, take back control of these prison wings and bring this to an end.
It is extraordinary, because also in the case of Hashim Abedi, I mean, he was operating in what they call a sort of, I don't know, kind of a mixed area where not only did he have access to a kitchen where he was able to forge weapons, and he was able to, as you say, boil oil. It's called a separation centre, but it doesn't seem to be putting people in separation. It puts people in sort of cahoots with each other. And in the Sun today, they've got stories saying that Anjem Chowdhury, the infamous terrorist and scumbag, as I like to call him, is also in this same separation unit, and he may well have been the inspiration for this actual physical prison attack.
That's right. So we have these so-called separation centres, which are specifically designed to contain the most dangerous extremists in our country who are in prison. And yet, in this case, it was clearly so poorly managed that far from being somewhere where he was contained, he was actually given access to privileges, like materials that could be used to create a weapon or boiling oil that could be used to attack prison officers. And then on Sunday, the following day, you saw a prisoner allegedly murder another inmate at HMP Whitemore, and he was in a so-called close supervision unit, which were designed for the most dangerous prisoners at that prison, and yet he was able to kill someone.
Yeah.
So something is going badly wrong in our prisons. I think this is turning into a full-blown crisis, and the Minister of Justice need to get a grip.
Yeah, Ian Aitchison, former prison governor, has written books about it. He's a well-known authority on the way that prisons should be run. He says that a baby should now be put in isolation, even if it sends him mad, that he should basically be on his own properly in some kind of, solitary confinement. But of course, we come back to the old human rights laws, don't we? Because somebody, no doubt a lawyer, will get on his side and say, well, this is cruel and unusual punishment and he shouldn't be put in isolation.
Well, I don't care about the welfare of dangerous criminals or terrorists. I care about the protection of prison officers, because these are brave people. They're doing a difficult job, often for not very much money, and we should be putting their safety above those of the criminals every single time. And what's happened in recent years in our prisons is governors have not got a grip, often for fear of political correctness, but also we've seen the courts intervening and dictating how governors should be running their prisons and protecting their officers, to such an extent now that there's a massive bureaucracy. If you want to put an inmate into one of these separation centres, you've got to fill in endless forms. The criminals can then take the prison to court at taxpayers' expense and question whether or not this is right for them. This is madness. You've got to enable prison governors to step up, run their prisons and have effective and robust regimes, so that a prison officer today in a prison like HMP Frankland or HMP Whitemoor can go to work thinking that they are going to be protected and that the governor has got their back.
Yes, that's exactly as it should be. But we also have a problem, and as you pointed out before on other occasions when you've been here, with the judicial system in general, don't we? In terms of the sentencing that people get, the sentencing that is given out to people, two-tier justice, it's often been called. We've already heard about the case of Lucy Connolly, who's in prison for 31 months. Liz Truss has said that she now should be released. She should at least be given permission to go and visit her family, her ill husband and her young children, and yet she's been consistently refused permission to do that. We've seen also the human rights lawyers fighting on behalf of a whole series of ghastly individuals who have done time in our prisons and who should be deported but who somehow can't be for incredibly ridiculous reasons. I mean, when is this all going to change?
Well, the most striking statistic I've seen recently was that more people have been prosecuted for the summer riots in Rotherham than for the decades-long grooming gang scandal in that town, which has affected hundreds, probably thousands of vulnerable children. That is completely wrong. The police and the authorities went after the rioters with more energy and determination than they have wicked people who have preyed on young girls and subjected them to sexual assault and rape. That is wrong. That is two-tier policing. That is an example of the criminal justice system having its moral compass completely broken. We've got to change this. I've been fighting this case. We overturned these sentencing guidelines that were going to come into place this month, which would have meant that there was a more lenient route through the criminal justice system for some people, such as so-called faith minorities, transgender people, women, and would have penalised white, straight, Christian men. That is completely wrong. What you and I think most people in this country believe is there should be equality before the law. Not equality of outcomes, but equality of treatment. That is the principle that I'm defending, and I think the police and every aspect of the criminal justice system now needs to take a very hard look in the mirror, root out all of this wokery and positive discrimination that has crept in recent years, and return to basic principles of fairness.
Because the people in this country are fed up. You see the front page of The Sun today, Britain is broken, exclusive by Harry Cole. 66% think the country is heading in the wrong direction. We can look at what's happening in Scunthorpe with the so-called rescue of British Steel, which I'm really not convinced by. The state of the illegal migrants coming over. We had another record, over 650 migrants coming in one day on Friday. People are fed up to the back teeth, and I mean, it has to be said, they're not just fed up with this Labour government, which they do detest, it would appear, but they're sort of fed up with the Conservative government that went before it as well. So what can you do to convince people that they shouldn't be fed up with the Tories?
Well, I think there is a deep sense of frustration and anger in the country at the unfairness. People feel that the state just isn't working right now, that the system is against them. Living standards are not rising. In fact, now you're seeing taxes going up and unemployment starting to rise. You do see mass migration, which parties of all political flavours have failed to get a grip on, despite promise after promise in elections.
And it's getting worse.
I'm worried about crime. The sense of impunity on the streets right now, that you can have your mobile phone nicked, there's tools being stolen from a tradesman's van. Nothing seems to happen. What I want the Conservative Party to stand for is that we are firmly on the side of decent, common sense, working people in this country, that we will bring immigration down, whatever that takes, even if that means fundamentally changing our human rights laws, that we will get a grip on crime and ensure our streets are safe and clean as well. Look at what's happening in Birmingham. That's a disgrace for the Labour Council there. And we've got to get this economy growing again. And that means a sensible approach to energy, not the idiotic policies of Ed Miliband that's increasing everyone's energy prices and endangering industries like the steel sector. And focus on working people's daily lives. That is where governments of all stripes have got it wrong in recent years.
And given, you know, what's happening in Scunthorpe, whether or not, you know, the man who used to be a fake solicitor is in charge of now British Steel, which is quite terrifying, to be honest. Angela Rayner apparently in charge of the bin strike, also terrifying. Keir Starmer's gone on holiday, but won't say Angela Rayner's in charge. I mean, it's not a great time to go on holiday, is it?
No. Look,
should he have gone?
Well, look, I mean, I think people are entitled to a bit of family time over Easter, but there's so much going on.
He hasn't recognised Easter
so
yet
much
either.
going. Well, no, I think that's completely wrong. This is a Christian country. It's right that we celebrate other religious holidays, but this is the most important event in the Christian calendar. In a Christian country, we should have the Prime Minister and politicians recognising that. I don't know why so many politicians seem to be squeamish about saying that when they tweet about every other religious holiday and festival over the course of the year. But I want to see this Labour government actually grip issues. Where are the Labour MPs in Birmingham, for example? Where's Jess Phillips? Where's Shabana Mahmood? If I was a Member of Parliament in Birmingham, I'd be there with the high vis on, cleaning up some of this rubbish, but they're nowhere to be seen, are they? We learnt that the chief executive of Labour-run Birmingham City Council had gone on a jolly to Cannes the other day, to some kind of housing conference, you know, sipping cocktails on the beach. They need to get a grip, and I'm worried that this strike is going to spread to other cities now across the country. It is utterly disgraceful. I went to Birmingham months ago to raise this issue, and yet nothing seems to have happened.
No, the strike has been going pretty much since the beginning of the year in one way, shape or form. There's now talk of it spreading to Yorkshire, spreading to Cambridgeshire, possibly Sheffield has got one going on already. And this is the problem with the Labour government, isn't it? Because you've got Jess Phillips in hiding ever since she announced that the grooming gangs inquiry isn't going to go on, isn't going to go ahead. She's frightened of it. You've got other Birmingham MPs who are busy trying to campaign for an airport to be built in Kashmir. I mean, it just seems to me that there's nobody inside of this government who understands quite what crisis they're facing, and that the whole country is in need of some kind of leadership, which Keir Starmer's not providing.
But I think people are yearning right now for someone to grip this country and actually lead, and you just don't see that from Keir Starmer at all. I mean, look at the farce we had the other day on steel, where he brought Parliament back on a Saturday to legislate for something that was obviously happening. We knew it was going to happen days, weeks ago. He could obviously have done that before. And one of the reasons why the steel industry is on its knees is because of the net zero policies of this government. Our industrial energy prices are 5 times that of the United States, 10 times of that of China. So if he really wanted to help the British steel industry, he would stop some of the net zeros, actually. Frankly, he'd sack Ed Miliband and get somebody who was sensible and pragmatic to run our national energy policy. And as you say, he wouldn't have our chief trade negotiator, someone whose CV was so weak they had to make up that he had been a solicitor. You know, the idea that Jonathan Reynolds is going to negotiate for the United Kingdom on the world stage is frankly a farce.
It is. It's laughable, but it's terrible at the same time. Very good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Indeed.
Thanks for
Robert
having me.
Jenrick MP, the Shadow Justice Secretary. We've got loads of time for your calls as well. We'll take those. Also, we'll be talking about what on earth is going on in the European Union. You might well ask. Daniel Hannan coming up next. This is Talk.
Smiles all round, it seems, on the ground after that successful launch. Oprah Winfrey is there as well, not in the rocket, sadly. She's in the crowd, cheering them all on. No doubt she'll make a documentary. I'm surprised Meghan Markle isn't in the rocket as well. That would have been great for her podcast, wouldn't it? We'll bring you details on that as it comes back to Earth, and I'm sure joyous applause all round from the billionaires that were allowed to take part.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:51. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10, of course. It's a pretty miserable day out there. Easter holidays, of course. That's why it's raining. It's pouring. And, of course, Keir Starmer, as Robert Jenrick just noted, has disappeared off on holiday, despite the fact that we've got a bins crisis in Birmingham being run by Angela Rayner, a steel crisis up in Scunthorpe being run by Jonathan Reynolds, and an immigration crisis run by Yvette Cooper down on the South Coast, where record numbers of young men are flooding into this country unabated and completely without any qualifications or identifications at all to be here. Let's talk to Lord Daniel Hannan, Conservative peer, and ask him whether he sees any reason why this crisis cannot be in some way averted. Daniel, very good morning to you. Can you hear me? No, he's frozen for a moment. We'll come back to Daniel Hannan in a sec. Fraser Myers is here as well, Deputy Editor of Spike. Fraser, very good morning to you. I hope you
morning,
can,
Mike.
I hope
Great
you
to be
can
here.
hear me. I mean, we do have a crisis in this country. I just asked Robert Jenrick if it was a good time for Keir Starmer to go on holiday. Some people would quite like him to go on holiday and not come back. But it's not a great time to be away, is it?
Oh, as you mentioned, there's the bin strike, there's the steel crisis, there's everything else that's sort of falling apart in the country. I mean, the bin strike in particular seems emblematic of the fact that nothing works, does it?
No.
Services are spiraling out of control. It's extraordinary. The steel issue is incredible. We're on the brink of having a major industry collapse. That would leave the UK, we're the country that invented modern steelmaking processes, as the only country in the G7 that wouldn't be able to make our own virgin or primary steel.
Yeah.
So these are really, really testing times for the government, and it's extraordinary that he's got away at this particular moment.
Exactly right. And I mean, the problem, of course, for the steel so-called solution and the rescue is that it hasn't really happened yet. What we've had is an intervention from the government, who could have intervened at any number of points in the last 9 months, but decided to wait until sort of final hour to do so. We don't yet know whether the coal, which is destined to keep the furnaces going, has even got to the plant yet. And we don't know when the next lot of coal is going to come in. As Ross Clark says in The Sun today, if only we had some coal of our own.
Well, the tragedy is we do actually have plenty of coal of our own beneath our feet, but the Labour government is determined for us not to dig it up. Ed Miliband celebrated the fact, or hailed the fact that one of the coal mines planned in Whitehaven in Cumbria was not going to go ahead. And I think in general, you can look at the crisis in steelmaking and point to the net zero policy, because, why is the steelmaking in crisis? One of the big factors is the huge energy costs. We have some of the highest industrial energy costs in the world. And, a big factor in that is the fact that we produce significantly less energy as a result of net zero policies. It's not just, the government talks a lot about adding renewable energy, adding wind and solar plants. But actually, the effect of all this is that we burn less, or when we stop burning coal entirely, which is the cheapest form of energy. We've stopped allowing new oil licenses in the North Sea. We won't frack for gas beneath our feet. I mean, so all of this combines to create a real crisis for our heavy industries.
Yeah.
And so anything that the government does now, it's true, perhaps Labour has brought British Steel a reprieve by taking it over from the Chinese company that seemed determined to shut the blast furnaces down. But in the long run, they're actually, all of their policies are pointing in the direction of the destruction of this industry.
Well, exactly right, because if they do follow on, which is what they intend to do, I'm led to believe anyway, and certainly they've said it, with this green steel, the green steel isn't really worth anything, because you can't build any military equipment with it, you can't build warships, you can't build military jets, you can't build tanks with it, because it's literally too soft and would melt as soon as anything came anywhere near it, and whether it was a missile or whatever. And so their whole kind of net zero commitment is not just killing off the plant itself, but it's killing off the entire ability of this country to make its own weaponry.
That's exactly right. And the blast furnaces in Scunthorpe that they're rescuing are the last in the UK that can be used to make virgin or primary steel. As you say, the steel that we would need for weapons and many other vital industries, including car making as well. They want to convert it to an electric arc furnace, which can only produce recycled steel from scrap metal. I mean, the same thing has already happened in Port Talbot. They've shut down their coke blast furnaces at the cost of 2,500 jobs. So that's pretty devastating for the town and the surrounding area and the local economy. I mean, Labour has offered them very generously to have mental health services.
Oh, great.
So to attend to their needs. But yeah, that was our biggest steelmaking plant. That's effectively, that's going to be temporarily closed while it converts to this electric plant. And that was what they envisaged for this plant in Scunthorpe, the British Steel plant in Scunthorpe. So really, when they say they're saving British Steel, they're going to be downgrading British Steel. What Labour cares about is the fact that British steelmaking, or the traditional steelmaking process, produces lots of carbon emissions. And they're far more worried about that than the future of industry or the future of jobs or defence or any of these other concerns that are raised by the downgrading of its industry.
Although, of course, Ed Miliband himself is not too concerned about carbon emissions, particularly his own carbon emissions, given all the flights that he's been taking. 10 times as much money spent by Ed Miliband in his first 10 months as environment sort of green energy secretary than his Tory predecessor in the last government.
Well, that's always the way. I think it's climate scientists more than any other type of academic take the most flights. I mean, we've seen the ridiculous charade of every climate summit where people arrive on private jets. The next summit happening in Brazil, they're clearing vast swathes of the Amazon in order to build the conference center where it's going to take place. I think that they think because they are quote unquote saving the planet, then that gives them a bit more of a carbon allowance than the rest of us. It's not something that they would allow us to do. It's not, Ed Miliband doesn't want us taking this many flights. It's not something he wants normal people to do. But for him, apparently, because he's doing the brilliant job of saving the world, then it's just about okay.
And just finally, of course, I mean, the problem exists and still does exist because Ed Miliband apparently still wants to keep China close, still wants to have China involved in infrastructure projects, which by just looking at what happened in Scunthorpe surely would be an absolute no-no.
Well, unfortunately, if we are to follow Ed Miliband's path and meet his targets, then China will be absolutely essential. There are plans to build a Chinese-owned wind farm. China still has big stakes in our nuclear power. China, we're one of the few countries in the West not to have put tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. In that sort of memorandum of understanding signed with China, Ed Miliband has offered to give China advice on how to transition away from coal, which I think is advice that they are planning to reject because they're building about roughly two coal power plants every week, while we constrain our own economy to meet net zero. You would think that the penny would have to drop at some point.
You would absolutely think so. Listen, Fraser, I've got to run. Thank you very much indeed. Lord Daniel Hannan, I think we've finally got him back, Conservative peer, of course. Lord Daniel Hannan, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Mike.
Sorry about the earlier difficulties there. Shall we talk about China and its involvement in British infrastructure? Because it seems to me that Ed Miliband seems convinced that, despite the fact that they behaved appallingly in Scunthorpe with the way that they've operated and the way that they tried to sabotage the rescue plan, that he still wants to work closely with them. Oops, he's frozen again. I'm not sure we're probably going to get that back, are we? Anyway, never mind. Well, listen, we'll get Lord Daniel Hannan back again another time, because that's what would be good. We'd like to hear from him. But unfortunately, technology is not what it should be. Coming up, though, you've got a treat in the next hour, because Harry Cole is back, political editor at The Sun. He's got a big story in the paper today about broken Britain. Britain is broken. 66% of people in a survey done exclusively for The Sun have said that basically Britain is going in the wrong direction. That's what they say. And I'm not surprised that they say it, quite frankly, because clearly Britain is going in the wrong direction. Keir Starmer's gone on holiday. The rest of us, I'm afraid, are stuck with the rain and the problems of Britain, the bins not being emptied, the steel not being made, and the immigrants still flooding into the country. That is the reality of 2025 in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. 0344 499 1000. Send us a voice note. We'll publish all of them. This is Talk. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people, because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
Unfortunately,
Oh, look.
it catches on his Johnson.
If he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 4 minutes past 9. A very, very warm welcome to the home of common sense, the place where you can shelter from the bad weather, from the terrible rains, from all the awful things that are coming down the pike that you don't want to see and you certainly don't want to hear about, because front page of The Sun this morning, it is official. The voters have said exactly what they want to say. The voters have voted, if you like, and the poll verdict is, I'm afraid, 66% think the country is heading in the wrong direction. It's exclusive by Harry Cole. He's going to join us numbers in a moment. The people of this country are furious at the government in red wall seats. It looks as though they're much more keen on voting for reform. They're worried about the borders, they're worried about the NHS, they're worried about the economy failing, they're worried about the UK simply just getting it all wrong and being completely broken. So many of you are in agreement with that. If you've been listening to this show, Morning Glory, for almost a year now since we kicked it off at the end of April last year, you will know that what we have here is a government out of its depth, completely out of control and completely out of ideas. They don't know what to do. Keir Starmer's gone on holiday, apparently. We think he might have gone to Costa Blanca. They've been rocked by an earthquake. Terrifying tremors, apparently, shaking entire buildings in the Spanish holiday resort. I mean, that's how bad his luck is. He can't fix the British Steel problem. He can't fix the NHS. They can't fix the Birmingham bins crisis. He won't give Angela Rayner permission to hang around and be in charge of the country while he's away. We don't know how long he's going to be gone for, but Robert Gentry was just here saying he needs to get his backside back to Britain and start fixing things instead of pretending to fix them. You know, Bob the Builder, he ain't. 0344 499 1000. There's only one bright spark in the news this morning, and that is, of course, Katy Perry. She went up into space, and unfortunately, she came back. Here's what she had to say.
What you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because you got to trust in yourself on this journey, and then you're feeling the love when you come down, for sure, and you're feeling that strength. So I feel really connected to that strong divine feminine right now.
Strong divine feminine. That's what we're all looking for, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. One here from Mike in Cheshire, who says the Bezos rocket taking the all-female crew produced 300 tonnes of CO2 and other pollutants. It would take me 69 years of driving a petrol car to get close to these numbers, and yet these same people tell me that I need to save the planet. Well, I'll tell you what, you wouldn't want to be in a car with those 5 women, would you, for 69 years? That would drive you completely nuts. You'd be driving off a cliff by the time you got far enough. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And, of course, we all know how it all started. Let's have a look at the countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay! It worked.
It's too funny, isn't it? Let's talk to Harry Cole, because what Harry Cole has got to say today in The Sun is going to be very, very shocking to Labour voters and to Labour apparatchiks and to Labour campaigners, because it's all going reform's way, it would seem. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, I mean, you've dropped a bit of a boulder into the pond on this one, haven't you? I mean, you've got Labour losing 12% of their lead from 2024, less than a year away, 39% down to 27%. Reform getting all of it, up from 18% to 30%. Reform leading the polls for the local elections.
Yeah, so this poll was focused exclusively in the Midlands and the North, the areas that Labour once called their red wall, their stronghold. Yeah. The sort of bulwark against towards for their parliamentary majorities. These northern Midlands, former industrial areas. As Labour as they came until Brexit, and then until Boris Johnson came along in 2019 and swept through them. And then obviously Labour clawed them back. And I think we were even discussing yesterday, it wasn't necessarily that the Labour did particularly well in these seats. It's just the Tory vote completely collapsed. Now, Nigel Farage obviously ate into the Tories in 2024. And now it looks like he's eating into Labour, and more than so, he's eating their breakfast. He's ahead. And not just in terms of the local elections. This is if there was an election tomorrow, 30% said they would vote reform. And I think what will really send chills down the sort of Labour strategist spines is that Nigel Farage, head-to-head against Keir Starmer, is beating him in almost, bar one, every single of the sort of key metrics that we normally use to decide who are the best prime ministers, who's trusted, who's more in touch with people like me, who's in touch with the common man, who's a strong leader, who do you trust to have radical solutions to fix the nation's problems. Farage is outpolling Starmer in all of those. The only thing Starmer leads by is who do you trust to deliver the NHS. And Starmer's only got a 5-point lead on that. And given how much that Labour have been pummelling the reform and pummelling Farage about the NHS, you can see they're clearly trying to solidify that. But on everything else, especially on immigration, It's all going Farage's way right now.
And perhaps the biggest problem for Starmer as well is that everyone presumably now knows who he is because he's the Prime Minister. But Nigel Farage is possibly the best known politician in the country, not least because of being on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and just because he's got a very high profile on social media.
Yeah, what I think was really striking about this poll is that the Tories are just nowhere really. I think they in the seats that will have local elections, they could actually hold up, because I think there's some of the seats that remain that because they cancelled a few of them, they delayed a few more. But in the seats that are having local elections, the Tories might hold up, but Reform seems to be the ones that will be going with momentum to be taking seats. So it'll be interesting. It's interesting to see just how little Kemi Badenoch features though. In those sort of head-to-heads and in name recognition, and in the drilled down into details. I don't know if it made it into the paper, but in that poll, there's only 1% of the country who've never heard of Nigel Farage. Right. So on paper, yeah, look, he's the leader of the fourth biggest party in Parliament. He's only got fifth biggest party in Parliament. He's only got 4 MPs at the moment. But people know who he is, and the problem the Tories have is that people don't really know who Kemi Badenoch is.
And he did have a massive, vote, didn't he? I mean, he got as many votes, if not more votes, in fact, I think, than Lib Dems, but targeted slightly differently.
He did.
I mean, how does that transfer into, say, local elections? Because, obviously that only over 4 million people voting, I think, for them. I mean, how will that place them? I suppose is what I'm saying in local elections.
The problem Reform has is their vote is spread across the country, as we can see in this, whereas the Lib Dems, for example, managed to get 70 seats with far fewer votes. Yeah. They were sort of relentlessly focused of where their vote is and sort of got that vote out very effectively. This is a big problem for Reform in the fact that they haven't had this traditional ground game that parties have. They haven't had traditional infrastructure. Now, we're told that's all being changed. That's what they're doing behind the scenes. They're building up branches. They're building up regional structures. And they're trying to desperately professionalise the party, but that takes a long time. So whether we'll see it in the local elections, it remains to be seen. But the critical thing under the first past the post is, at the moment, you can get a lot of votes across the country for not that many seats. Once you start to get into the 30s, once you get above 30%, you start to the balance seems to tip, and actually you will be able to turn those votes across the country into taking seats across the country. So this has been a really crucial moment for Reform to breach it. They've been ahead and bumping around evenly with Labour in the polls for the last couple of months. But if they start to overtake Labour, they start to get into the 30s, which this poll shows they are already at in the Midlands and the North. If they can make that across the rest of the country, then things are going to get very spicy very quickly. The one red light I'd say in that polling for Farage is that, yes, he is the most, if you look at net popularity, so if you minus the number of people who like you from the people that don't like you, you get a sort of number. Look, Starmer's on minus 20-something, Reeves is on minus 30-something, Nigel's on minus 4. Now, that does mean that more people don't like him than like him. So, he's clearly a divisive character. The people that really like him, but lots of people don't like him. He's got a bit of the Trumps to him in that sense. So what will be really interesting to see play out in the next few months is whether he is able to, if there's a ceiling to his support, and then this might be it, or whether he's able to take this, push on further, and really get into those 30s in the polling numbers, and take this popularity he has in the Midlands and the North around the rest of the country.
And also, if he does get a big boost and they do win control of some local borough councils and all of that, that sort of gives them more credibility for the man in the street as well. And he's written a piece in The Sun today, as I'm sure you've seen, in which it says, when Keir Hardie founded the Labour Party in 1893, he declared it existed to give the working man and woman a voice, not to pander to the middle classes. And an awful lot of working class people would agree with that. The Labour Party's not for them anymore.
Yeah, look, that was the problem in 2019. The Labour Party had taken their vote, the vote of the Red Wall working classes, and sneered at them at Brexit and spent all that time trying to unpick Brexit that they had voted for in a large part. And you can't take your voters for granted. And so when you come back into power, having taken these seats back, and you cut winter fuel payments, and you put taxes up by, you took taxes on jobs up by, that 40 billion tax raid last year, and you're spending all your time, as we discussed at length yesterday, sort of pandering to net zero, ideology, you wonder whether the voters cannot be taken for granted. They have no God-given right to back us. Parties have no God-given right to expect the support of certain demographic groups. So you got to pay to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And this would be very miserable reading for Keir Starmer, who's gone off on his holes. We thought yesterday he might do that, and as you said, he has now gone somewhere. We're not quite sure where. There's a lot of bad weather in Spain, so we're assuming he might have gone there and taken the weather with him.
A lot of bad weather here as well.
There is, yeah. But he won't pass the baton of leadership to Angela Rayner, I suppose for obvious reasons. But he's got a problem, hasn't he? He's got Angela Rayner not solving the bins crisis in Birmingham. He's got Jonathan Reynolds not solving the steel crisis in Scunthorpe. He's got Yvette Cooper not solving the immigration crisis on the south coast. And yet, he doesn't seem to have any answers.
Yeah, well, there's a really striking bit in the poll exactly on this, which is, Labour's manifesto commitment was change. We are change. They've been wanging on about this plan for change ever since, shoehorning it into every soundbite, every speech, every quote, regardless of the subject. It's all plan for change, plan for change, plan for change. And in that poll, in the Red Wall, in the North, in the Midlands, who do you trust more to deliver change? Nigel Farage, not Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and that is a terrifying read for him. Harry, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Harry Cole, police commander at The Sun. That's news on Spain, by the way. The weather is bad here, but it's a lot worse there. There's flooding in Lanzarote, and in Costa Blanca there's been an earthquake. Terrifying tremors shake the entire building in some Spanish parts of the Spanish holiday resort. Residents and British people describe being almost thrown out of bed when the tremors hit just after midnight. We'll find out more about that and bring it to you. Let's get a voice note from Dale on Britain back in the 70s.
And here we are, and here we are, and here we go. We got some rubbish, putting it in the road. Here we go. Rubbish all over the road. Thanks, Mike.
Brilliant. Dale, fantastic. A bit of status quo there for those who actually saw them in the 70s, believe it or not. That's how old I am. But yeah, rubbish all over the road. That's exactly right. Darryl says this, Mike, me and the missus went out to do the weekly shop. My jaw dropped at the prices. When we went through the till, the final total came to 260 quid. There's only me and her and the little dog. It's outrageous out there. Is it profiteering? Have a good one. One from Cliff in Berkshire says on the prison attack, I wonder whether the injured officers were actual prison officers or auxiliaries. We've become a country where we try to do everything on the cheap. Nurses replaced with healthcare assistants, police officers replaced with PCSOs, doctors replaced with associates, and teachers replaced by teachers' assistants. Welcome to Pound Shop Britain. Well, I think that's exactly what's happened to this country, isn't it? Alan in Middlesbrough says, morning, Mike. I embrace your optimism, but I can't see how broken Britain can be repaired. I'd be encouraged if there was one scintilla of evidence that one aspect of our public sector is praiseworthy. Can you name one? For me, excuse me, for me, that is where the focus should be, starting with Starmer and Hoyle. Let's have a break. I'll have some water.
What is this fundraiser for?
It's called #TheyKnew, because people at the top of the police, of social services, of the council, all knew what was going on and chose to ignore it. They turned away. I've spent 20 years sharing the truth and the evidence with police complaints, with the IOPC, with the government, with the Home Office. The evidence is there.
And you resigned your job
I
to do
resigned my
so.
job, but nobody wants to hear it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 20 minutes past 9. What's the point giving Angela Rayner the Deputy Prime Minister's role if he doesn't trust her, says Alan in Merseyside. I think that's probably right. And Morning Mike, says Steve in Ipswich. I take it that the in-flight meal on Bezos' rude-shaped rocket was word salad because they all came down talking cobblers. Well, I mean, I don't think they had time for a meal, did they? They're only up there 4 minutes. I mean, by the time they've served it, I'm afraid you'll be completely out of time. Good morning, says Tash in East Sussex. Mike and team, Margaret Thatcher would never have run off on holiday with Britain breaking down. If I remember rightly, she may have gone to Chequers for the weekend, but still would have been earning the salary she never took from the British people. Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the idea of putting Keir Starmer and Margaret Thatcher in the same sentence in terms of leadership, absolutely ridiculous, because we were just saying, and talking to Robert Jenrick about it, Keir Starmer's got plenty of opportunities to be a leader, but he simply isn't leading. He's gone on holiday. I mean, I'm not going to give him a hard time for going on holiday. People deserve and are allowed to go on holiday, particularly with kids, Easter holidays and all that sort of thing. However, he hasn't got a solution for the Birmingham bins crisis. He hasn't got a solution for stopping the boats and the immigration crisis. He doesn't have a solution for what's going on in Scunthorpe with the steel crisis. And he certainly doesn't have a solution for how to bring our energy bills down, because that is part of the problem. Ridiculous, isn't it? Let's talk to Catherine Porter, independent energy analyst, because quite frankly, the state of play now with Ed Miliband and net zero is getting out of control. We've got the most expensive electricity in the world, practically, certainly the most expensive in Europe, and it's not even properly feasible to run a furnace, whether it's an electric arc furnace, which is pointless, or whether it's a blast furnace, as it currently is in Scunthorpe. The absolute and utter maniacal price of the electricity and the energy that they need to actually power the place means they're losing £700,000 a day. It's nonsensical. Catherine, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning. I've been admiring many of your tweets over the past week or so, because you're absolutely nailing the government on the basis that they don't seem to know what they're doing. They've put a guy in charge of British Steel who's literally never run a pub, never mind a British business of any kind whatsoever. He's pretended he was a solicitor. He's a sort of jumped-up councillor. I mean, what is going on?
Well, I mean, I don't think that very many people in the Labour Party seem to know. A lot of them are boasting about how they've nationalised British Steel.
Yeah.
Which actually isn't what they've done.
No, of course they haven't.
They've just taken operational control with the option to nationalise it later on,
right,
if the owners don't comply with the instructions.
And they don't seem to want to nationalise it. I mean, we find ourselves, I said this to Richard Tice yesterday, in a rather curious situation where a party from considerably right of Labour want to nationalise it, and Labour are actually resisting it.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure why, because at this point I don't think there's going to be any practical difference. I think the taxpayer is going to be on the hook for quite a lot of money here. And if you look at the condition of the plant, and I'm not really an expert in steel making, but what people are saying is that the blast furnaces are getting pretty old. They had some pretty major outages in the last couple of years, and they're going to need some pretty significant investment to make them viable for the long term. Now, as you were saying, there's this huge issue around energy pricing and energy costs. Although with the industry supercharger that was introduced by the previous government, steel makers and other heavy industry are exempt from some of the environmental levies. They still have to pay all of the carbon taxes, the climate change levy and so on. And the estimates of that for British Steel were anything between £200 and £300 million a year. So these are pretty significant costs. And then you have also all these issues around access to raw materials such as coking coal. Right. So I think this is not going to be a trivial problem to solve. It's going to cost the taxpayer a lot of money, and it doesn't really appear that there's any sort of strategy around managing that.
Well, that's the worry that I've got about everything this government does. They don't seem to have any strategy to do anything really, and this is obviously a very serious problem. It's obviously something that can't be, kind of sorted out with a quick fix. I spoke to James Murray yesterday from the cabinet, and he didn't seem at all clear as to how much money they would have to put in. He wasn't at all clear as to how long the government would be running it, and he didn't know whether not only the current shipment of coal was going to arrive, and then where the next one was going to come from.
No, I mean, and it's pretty interesting that they're getting this coal from Japan, because Japan really doesn't produce any coking coal anymore. It probably originated from Australia. So it'd make more sense to just go directly to Australia and buy the coal from them, rather than going via Japan. But I think that one of the problems we have is that there's really nobody in the cabinet that has any experience of running a business. So this is going to be a massive challenge for them. And the other problem is that with nationalised industries, and I know this isn't technically nationalised, decisions get made for political reasons rather than for business reasons. So the incentive and the impetus to actually control costs just isn't going to be there in the way that it would with a private enterprise. So there's a potential for this to cost a lot of money to the taxpayer.
Yes. Well, I mean, it could be billions, couldn't it? And also, what we don't yet know is why, and I asked him this question as well, which he didn't have an answer for, why this company are still the main shareholders, given what they're being accused of doing by the government, including practically trying to sabotage the plant.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. If what they're saying is true and they were restricting access to raw materials in the hope of a cold shutdown of the blast furnaces, and that would pretty much destroy them permanently. Blast furnaces of that age, if they did have a cold shutdown, it would just be too expensive to bring them back into use. And one of the things that surprises me is that, the government's talking about going to electric arc furnaces here. That's something that's very difficult to retrofit into an existing operation. And then, of course, you lose the ability to produce virgin steel. Now, one of the things that Miliband has been wanting to do, obviously, is increase the nuclear capability within the power sector, wanting to build up our nuclear supply chains. You cannot build a reactor pressure vessel with anything other than virgin steel. So if we lose the capability to make that, it's not just within the military that will suffer, because in the same way that you wouldn't make a nuclear submarine out of recycled steel, you wouldn't build a nuclear reactor from one either.
Right. So effectively, it's steel that's not really very much good for anything, is it? I mean, what's the point?
Well, I think there are some lower grade applications for which it can be useful. The problem with the steel that they're talking about with electric arc furnaces is it's made using scrap steel, and you don't really know what's in it. So there can be all sorts of impurities in there that affect the end performance, which is why you'd never use it in something really critical like a nuclear reactor pressure vessel. And so it's really important that we retain those capabilities for our own national security. You would not want to be relying on imported steel for making your submarines because you just don't know what you're going to get. And you're putting yourself then in the hands of people who may not be friendly nations for supply. And I think that in particular relates to the Chinese.
Well, that is a big worry, isn't it? Because the Times have got a story this morning saying that notwithstanding what's going on in Scunthorpe, Ed Miliband still wants to do very many deals with the Chinese state, with Chinese companies, particularly when it comes to, his net zero fanaticism of building more wind farms or with materials all made in China, or solar panel, farms, which are also going to be used by solar panels all made in China.
Yeah, and it's not just the economic impact of that that's the concern. There's also a huge social impact. 60% of the world's polysilicon originates in the Xinjiang province of China, where there are significant concerns around the use of forced labour. And the Labour Party in the UK recently rejected amendments to legislation that would have restricted the use of goods and materials that might have involved the use of forced labour, because they prioritise this net zero ambition. But the really annoying thing about this net zero target is it measures only territorial production emissions. So what we're doing is we're reducing the emissions that we create here in the UK by moving our manufacturing to China, where the energy is dirtier, and that means global emissions go up because you have the dirtier energy in China, and then you have to ship everything here. So this isn't helping the planet in any way. It's just really a paper target that is harming British industry very significantly, benefiting the Chinese economy and not benefiting the planet.
Yes.
And this is what's so frustrating about it. It's costing us a fortune and actually not achieving anything.
I mean, I was musing on this sort of problem last night, wondering to myself if I was going completely mad when I thought, I wonder if the Chinese just invented net zero to ruin the world's economies and benefit their own, because that appears to be what's happening. I mean, if they didn't invent it, they might as well have done.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're a huge beneficiary of it. They pay lip service to wanting to decarbonise. Their official targets are later than ours. And in the meantime, they've spent, a couple of decades going around the world securing access to raw materials. They control a lot of the supply chains now. They've invested heavily across South America and in Africa to be able to secure access to raw materials that they take back to China for processing. And so they've really embedded themselves within global supply chains, and it's quite difficult to avoid them now in many sectors. If you look at rare earth magnets, they're pretty much the only country in the world that will produce those at scale, because they are extremely polluting. They have a tailings sort of river from that's moving at something like 20 to 30 meters per year towards the Yellow River, and it's just destroying the environment there, but they don't care. So yeah, I mean, this is just not good news for everyone else.
No, it really isn't. Catherine, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Catherine Porter, independent energy analyst there. Let's get a phone call from Gareth, who's in Derbyshire. Wants to talk about the steel business. Gareth, hi.
Good morning, Mike. Nice to speak to you.
Good to talk to you. What do you want to tell me?
Right, so this steel making plant in Scunthorpe.
Yes.
Now, I keep hearing reports on the telly, in particular the BBC, that the government are trying to access raw materials for the steel making plant.
Yes.
Now, I tell you, from my village in Derbyshire, about 20 miles, if I look roughly southeast, I can see the Ratcliffe Power Station, which is it's on the Trent and it's currently disused. I'm going to start using that, a raw materials-fired power station, because what I want to know is, what are these raw materials? Is it a secret? What do you think it is?
Well, I mean, he kept referring, when I had James Murray on yesterday, he kept referring to the phrase raw materials instead of coal. And I can only assume it's because they don't want to use the word coal or coke, because it would remind people that actually we could have got that out of the ground in this country. That, for example, I mean, he actually denied, and I'm told that he got it wrong, and I don't know whether he deliberately lied or whether he just didn't know. He said that the coke that would have been provided to the Scunthorpe plant from the mine in Cumbria wouldn't be suitable. But Richard Tice told me that it was completely suitable and it would be absolutely fine. So maybe they don't want to say the word coal because it will remind people of the fact that they closed down the last remaining coal mine that could have supplied the energy for the blast furnace.
Well, do they think we're stupid? I mean, at the end of the day, we know it's coal.
Yeah.
We know we've got coal in the ground.
Yeah.
And now, with all these tariffs that they're putting on trade these days, wherever this coal is coming from, so let's say, I don't know, where is it coming from? China? Is it coming from Newcastle? Because I don't think so. But if they suddenly put 1,000% tariff on imported coal, where we're going to be?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to me that, things could happen. We're closing down all these coal-fired power stations that were built. The cooling towers, they're actually quite, if you look at them, they're quite nice. People have got used to them after years that they've been there.
Yeah, of course.
So, I think it's a bit of a concern, but I think they should be honest, because we're not stupid, are we? I mean,
no, I think this is the trouble, though. They try to pull the wool over our eyes on absolutely everything. I mean, Keir Starmer seems to think if he stands in a room in front of a load of people who look like they'd rather be anywhere else in the world apart from with him, and he tells us that he's putting money back into the pockets of working people and that he's striving to save British steel and make sure that energy is generated in our own country, for our own country. It's all cobblers. None of it's true.
Exactly. But keep on it, Mike. Keep on.
I'll do my best. Thank you very much indeed. Gareth in Derbyshire there spotted the difference between the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth and the lies that come out of the Labour government. As Ross Clark writes in The Sun this morning, if only Britain had its own coal reserves, we would be so much easier and so much better off. We'd be able to just get the stuff out of the ground, put it straight in a truck and put it on a railway and take it over to Scunthorpe and put it in a blast furnace. That would be simple, wouldn't it? Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. Great show as usual. James from Liverpool here. Just a thought. Starmer on holiday. Imagine if you were on holiday and Captain Wet Wipe gets on the sunbed next to you. Oh, my word. It just gets worse, doesn't it? Great show. Keep all the good work, mate.
Yeah, the question is, if he did get on the sunbed next to you, would you talk to him? Fixing the foundations. What if he asked you to put some lotion on his back? Oh, God. That would really be a problem, wouldn't it? This from Paula in Salford. Mike, what an own goal again from the Conservatives of not electing Robert Jenrick as leader. He is clearly so much more talented and committed than Kemi Badenoch. I would like to thank Robert for carrying on holding Labour to task and forcing the government to pause the racist sentencing nonsense. Not everybody agrees with that. M. Search says, or Matt in Brighton, I should say, Jenrick just saying we will get immigration down, we will work to reduce the numbers. Has he been on the moon for the last 6 years? They let millions in. Laughable. Nobody believes him or the Tories anymore. And one from Tony from Barrow in Furness says, Mike, China owns some of our oil rigs. I worked on the Buzzard platform, which is Chinese-owned, amongst other oil rigs. Well, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me. The Chinese have been very smart at basically owning lots and lots of things around the world. Absolutely incredible. Graham from Kent says, how much does it cost the taxpayer in the UK to keep one of these extremist scumbags in prison, only for them to attack the staff? We've got to get tough in the UK and bring back some real deterrents and put them in place. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Coming up, we're going to talk about Hull and wine. I know those two things don't normally come in the same sentence, but Helena Nicholas is going to join us because it turns out that Hull has been tipped to become the new Bordeaux region as climate change reshapes Europe's wine map. Let's find out if it's going to be any good. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:38. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Interesting show we've had today. Robert Jenrick was on earlier talking about the prisons problem in this country, which is that there are too many mad extremists being held in prison and they're not being held in solitary confinement, which is exactly what they should be. We've also had, of course, many of you commenting on going up into space. Katy Perry and her female sort of squad, if you like, for want of a better word, all went up for about 4 minutes and declared themselves to be absolutely and utterly delighted by it all. Here's Maddie on Blue Origin.
Hi Mike, this is Maddie from Essex. With regards to this space odyssey, I mean, it's shocking to learn that the most important woman on the planet, Her Royal Highness Meghan Markle, wasn't on board. I mean, what do you think happened? Do you think her invitation got lost in the post? I mean, how very dare they? How very dare they indeed?
I mean, that's absolutely good. What a good point to make. That she'll be absolutely really annoyed about the fact that they didn't ask her to join them on their merry little jaunt up there into space. But maybe she'll be on the next one. Who can say? Maybe she didn't want to spend the money. You know, Harry spent it all on lawyers in London, fighting the government, trying to get himself some protection. While he has the protection that he gets, of course, when he comes. Let's talk now to Helena Nicklin, our favourite award-winning drinks writer, TV presenter, and one of the three drinkers, of course. She's even got her own wine academy, this woman. I mean, there's nothing she can't do. I've got a story for you, Helena, and I'm sure you saw it, spotted it in the Times yesterday. Hull is the new Bordeaux, apparently. I'm slightly sceptical about this because they're not saying when it's likely to happen, but it's all about Britain getting warmer. I'm looking out the window. It doesn't look very warm today.
No, it does not. And I think they did mean quite a long time in the future. Well, actually, not that long. I think in about 10 years' time. But yeah, we are definitely getting warmer, and that means that we can ripen grapes more easily, and that means more delicious wines coming from further north.
Yes, I mean, they're talking a lot about Cabernet Sauvignon in the piece of the Times, and I was surprised to learn, actually, that you could get British Cabernet Sauvignon, because I didn't actually know that you could. I don't think I've ever had any, because I tend to think of... I know you've brought some in on many occasions, British red wine, but I tend to think more of English wine as kind of, you know, more sparkling and whiter and more rosé, really.
Well, you are right. We are better at the sparkling wine and the lighter grape varieties, more like Pinot Noir, because they like the cool. Cabernet Sauvignon really does need a lot more sunshine and a lot more heat, which is why when they're talking about Hull being like Bordeaux, which is the home of Cabernet Sauvignon, you're thinking, wow, how warm does it have to be? Very warm is the answer to that question. And I'm not sure, because I think if Hull is able to grow Cabernet Sauvignon like Bordeaux, there are going to be some other problems going on climatically.
Well, you would think, it might get a bit hot down, because presumably if that all happens, then everything sort of moves up from Sussex and Kent and other parts south up to the bits further north, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the south is getting warmer. I mean, we're benefiting from it at the moment in the south of England because we're kind of where Champagne was about 20 years ago. Champagne is getting quite warm now. And if you're looking down even further south in France to the Rhone Valley and to Ventoux, those wines are really struggling because it's really hot. You know, even Chablis now is losing a lot of that crisp edge when it's too warm because it's, you know, they're not getting the acidity they used to. But yes, wine production is certainly moving north in the UK, but I think there would be other things to worry about, as I said, if it gets so warm that we can grow Bordeaux varieties in Yorkshire.
I mean, happily, I was reading that it's never going to be warm enough in Scotland. They'll just have to keep producing whiskey and gin, I suppose, because it's never going to be a problem. But is it? I mean, you've told me before that French vineyards and French winemakers have been buying up land in southeast England because they want to actually sort of, you know, almost colonise it. Does that mean that that some of these southern wine companies from England will be colonising the north then?
I mean, quite possibly. Yes, we've got a lot of champagne houses buying up land down in Kent and, you know, around the south coast to make sparkling wine. I wouldn't be surprised, and there probably are some I don't even know about actually, being bought up a little bit further north. Essex, believe it or not, is the next big place for fine wine.
Is it?
Yes, there's astonishing wines coming out of there at the moment.
Wow. You may have to bring some of those in because, you know, it's almost going to be that time of the year. I can imagine they could have some fun with the labels coming from Essex, couldn't they?
You'd think, yes.
The names.
Well, quite. But although if they're positioning themselves as fine wine, maybe they won't want to do that. But I'd love to do an Essex tasting, a fine wine Essex tasting.
It's an Essex white. It's a bit tart, I can think of. Something like that. There we are. But listen, it's all good in the hood. I mean, what's happening in the wine? What's big and sort of trendy in the wine world at the moment? What should we all be drinking?
Very good question. Well, rather boringly, it's good for our health, but mid-wines are a thing where wines are being picked a little earlier, so they're naturally less alcoholic. That seems to be a trend at the moment. Okay. Speaking about, well, Essex, I am from Essex, by the way, so, you know, I say this...
No way. I don't believe it.
But also various parts around the country. White wine is massively on the increase, not because it's necessarily more delicious or better for you in any way, but because people are bleaching their teeth and they don't want to stain them. That's a huge reason why it's a big trend. Yes, so it's all a bit different this year.
Yes. Well, listen, we must discuss it further and explore it, and we'll see if we can get you in for a bit of a tasting at some point as we get closer to the summer weather.
Yeah, I'd love that. Absolutely.
Excellent. Good to hear it. Helena Nickley, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Helena, award-winning drinks writer, TV presenter, one of course, the Three Drinkers, which you can find on Amazon. Let's get a voice note from Simon.
Good morning, Mike. It's Simon from Devon. So you had a dream about China concocting net zero for their own gains and making it all up. Wow. Next you'll be telling us that they concocted some sort of virus out of Wuhan to take down the whole of the world's economy. Oh, Mike, you're getting there, kid. I'm going for a walk on the beach. I might have a swim in the sewage. See you later, mate. Bye.
Swim in the sewage. Be careful. Yeah, to be fair, I've already said that they did concoct COVID in a lab. I mean, I did say that quite a long time ago, to be fair. Let's talk to Mike in Carlisle. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Mike.
How you doing, sir? What do you want to tell me?
I'm good. I want a bottle of that wine.
What, the stuff that doesn't stain your teeth?
Yeah, I don't care. I'll have one else. I'll have a bottle of the wine.
Absolutely. Right. Go on. What do you got for me?
I'm just listening. I've been reading that Jonathan Reynolds has acted decisively to secure the raw materials. Now, we only recalled Parliament on Saturday.
Yes.
So how have they secured them and imported them from America and got them into Hull within 3 days?
Yeah. Well, they haven't, have they?
Cargo ship.
Yeah.
Or was it a sham recall of Parliament?
Well, I mean,
it's been going on for a month at least.
Oh, I know. Well, there's no question that the coal was on a ship that was supposedly coming in from Japan, and it was being held off the coast of Humberside, right? Apparently, because nobody was paying for it. And I think that was the hold-up. So I think when they say secured, if they've secured it, that means they've obviously paid for it and passed, I think it's 55,000 tonnes or something of coal.
No, this stuff came from America.
Well, this is different then. This is a different thing.
Yeah, it's the iron ore.
Well, I mean, I'm not buying it, I'm afraid.
It's not. It's a sham.
Yeah.
We've been at it for a month at least.
Yeah.
They'd have to be. Branson failed to get across in 3 days in a speedboat.
In a speedboat, I remember. I was on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I nearly came with him because I had to get on it. I was on the boat, right, and we were doing a press conference at the Water Club in New York, and Che Blythe was there. And as they started the motor up, Che Blythe sort of came around the corner. I was like, "What are you doing on here?" I said, "I thought you would." He said, "No, we're not stopping." He said, "We're taking off from here, and we're just going all the way to Ireland." And I went, "Cracky!" I had to jump off as they were leaving. So there we are. Anyway, listen, good to talk to you, Mike. Thanks very much indeed, Mikey Carlisle. It's all a sham. Of course it is. It's the Labour government, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mike Graham.
The truth is, the Chinese, we believe,
never wanted this to be a success. We think they were always going to close down these furnaces and
asset strip it, right?
They're going to asset strip it. They bought it for give or take £1. It came with hundreds of millions of inventory and cash and assets. And we think they were going to take back the primary steelmaking capability back to China and basically have the UK in a stranglehold.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to very nearly 10 minutes to 10. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here very shortly. I might have to ask her about a double-barrelled surname, obviously, because that's in the papers today. I'd be delighted to be asked to put sunscreen on Starmer's back, says Kate in Warwickshire. I can't tell you what I'd spell out, though. Yeah, I can figure that one out. Gareth says, if I only had 4 minutes in space, I would spend the time glued to the window looking at the amazing scenery, not posing for the inside cameras and prancing around. Unbelievable. Absolutely. And one says, so Mike says this, Holmfirth in Yorkshire have vineyards. They're called Last of the Summer Wine. Really? Well, there we are. Lots of you had some great messages coming through. One from Pete the Mole says, good on Katy Perry. She's done something very few of us will ever get to do. Plus it takes bottle to sit on a giant firework and get launched to the edge of space. Well done. And one from Don says, how about Hulled wine for Christmas? Why not? Very good. Now, before we go, let's have another listen to Robert Jenrick. I asked him earlier when he was here, the Shadow Justice Secretary, whether now is a good time for Keir Starmer to go on holiday.
No. Look,
should he have gone?
Well, look, I mean, I think people are entitled to a bit of family time over Easter, but there's so much going on.
He hasn't recognised Easter yet either.
Well, no, I think that's completely wrong. This is a Christian country. Yeah. It's right that we celebrate other religious holidays, but this is the most important event in the Christian calendar. In a Christian country, we should have the Prime Minister and politicians recognising that. I don't know why so many politicians seem to be squeamish about saying that when they tweet about every other religious holiday and festival over the course of the year.
Yeah, I mean, that is a bit unfortunate, isn't it? The fact
I think people are entitled to a bit of family time over Easter.
Not yet managed to acknowledge that Easter is upon us. He may well have gone on an Easter holiday. We're not sure where he's gone. This is coming from Gary. He says, Mike, not only am I 100% certain that Keir Starmer has gone to Spain for his holiday, I can tell you exactly where he will be at 8 o'clock tomorrow. It will be in an executive box at the Bernabeu Stadium in Madrid to watch Arsenal play the second leg of their Champions League match. Either he is staying in Madrid with his family, or he will be flown in on a taxpayer-funded private jet from whichever party donor's villa in Marbella that he and Victoria Sponge are holed up in. I mean, I think I read earlier today that he's gone on holiday and he's gone by a commercial jet. He has not gone on a private jet as far as we are aware. But we haven't heard from anybody who might have seen him on one of those jets. So I'm not really sure. We were talking earlier about some of the problems with the NHS. And this has come in from Fran in Tunbridge Wells, where she says, morning, Mike. I have an endoscopy every 3 years to check that my Barrett's esophagus hasn't become cancerous. I've just been informed that it's now been changed to every 4 years. Another way of fiddling the figures and risking not catching cancer early enough to treat it successfully. And this is the problem. You know, once again, we keep getting told by the NHS that they're dealing with things and they're improving cancer care, that they're improving the waiting list, that they're knocking everything down and they're repairing the NHS and making it better and more efficient. But I just don't believe it. Peter in Norwich says, cancer care in the NHS is not healthcare. It is survival of the fittest, Darwinian selection. By the time you get to actually see a consultant, if you haven't already passed away, you will be probably in stage 4 inoperable. And that is a terrible indictment of the system, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. How about this from Matthew, who's in Spain? He says, your guest from Birmingham Council hit the nail on the head. A radical overhaul of UK employment law is required. It should be far easier for employers to sack underperforming or incompetent employees and to do so at short notice without recourse to appeal. This should apply at all levels in all organisations. The fundamental problem with broken Britain is the sense of entitlement that abounds, coupled with lack of consequence for poor behaviour and choices. It's a cultural issue and one that a government of any colour will find difficulty in changing. And that is true. I mean, the problem, I think, for all people who work in Britain right now is that there doesn't appear to be really any sanction for anybody getting anything wrong. If you work in a council and the council goes bankrupt, surely you shouldn't be working there anymore. If you work as an MP and you can't solve a problem like the bins crisis, then you shouldn't really be an MP for that area, should you? Let's hear some more from what Robert Jenrick had to say when he was here.
Jess Phillips, where's Shabana Mahmood? If I was a Member of Parliament in Birmingham, I'd be there with the high-vis on, cleaning up some of this rubbish, but they're nowhere to be seen, are they? We learnt that the chief executive of Labour-run Birmingham City Council had gone on a jolly to Cannes the other day, to some kind of housing conference, sipping cocktails on the beach. They need to get a grip, and I'm worried that this strike is going to spread to other cities now across the country. It is utterly disgraceful. I went to Birmingham months ago to raise this issue, and yet nothing seems to have happened.
No, the strike has been going pretty much since the beginning of the year in one way, shape or form. There's now talk of it spreading to Yorkshire, spreading to Cambridgeshire, possibly Sheffield has got one going on already. And this is the problem with the Labour government, isn't it? Because you've got Jess Phillips in hiding ever since she announced that the grooming gangs inquiry isn't going to go on, isn't going to go ahead. She's frightened of it. You've got other Birmingham MPs who are busy trying to campaign for an airport to be built in Kashmir. I mean, it just seems to me that there's nobody inside of this government who understands quite what crisis they're facing, and that the whole country is in need of some kind of leadership, which Keir Starmer's not providing.
But I think people are yearning right now for someone to grip this country and actually lead, and you just don't see that from Keir Starmer at all. I mean, look at the farce we had the other day on steel, where he brought Parliament back on a Saturday to legislate for something that was obviously happening. We knew it was going to happen days, weeks ago. He could obviously have done that before. And one of the reasons why the steel industry is on its knees is because of the net zero policies of this government. Our industrial energy prices are 5 times that of the United States, 10 times of that of China. So if he really wanted to help the British steel industry, he would stop some of the net zeros, actually. Frankly, he'd sack Ed Miliband and get somebody who was sensible and pragmatic to run our national energy policy. And as you say, he wouldn't have our chief trade negotiator, someone whose CV was so weak they had to make up that he'd been a solicitor. You know, the idea that Jonathan Reynolds is going to negotiate for the United Kingdom on the world stage is frankly a farce.
And that's Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Minister there, talking about why Ed Miliband is not the right man to be leading any sort of revolution, never mind the net zero revolution. Just got a bit of breaking news, by the way. We're being told that new supplies arrived at Immingham Port for immediate delivery to the Scunthorpe plant. I presume that means the coal that came from the ship that came from Japan that was sitting in the North Sea has now finally been unloaded, which means that we've finally presumably paid for the coal that we didn't have to dig out of the ground in this country because we can't anymore. And so that has now arrived. So presumably they'll be able to keep the furnaces going for a little while longer. But of course now what they have to do is order some more coal, because that coal's going to burn and then they're going to run out of it. I think I was right. I think I read earlier that it was something like 55,000 tonnes of it. I don't know how long that lasts in a blast furnace, but I presume if it lasts for a month or maybe 2, that's fine, but they'll need to get some more, and they'll need to order it in, presumably, either from Japan or Australia or China or somewhere that actually mines coal. So Keith may be on holiday, says Glenn from Leeds, but who's paid for it? Who's paid for the flights and the accommodation? Who's bought him a new holiday wardrobe and all the entertainment and food? I wish I could afford a holiday. I guess I'll have to wait until 2029 when Rachel in the canteen says I'm going to be £500 better off. Maybe I can afford one overnight stay in Scarborough by that time. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not great, is it? Morning, Mike, says Peter in Suffolk. I was a toolmaker back in the day, back when it was a good career to pursue. Now we have a Prime Minister who says he made good even though his dad was only a toolmaker. Sums up this country in one sentence. Absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Shirley on Labour.
Good morning, Mike. It's Shirley from the Cotswolds. I've just been listening to Catherine Porter, and what a breath of fresh air. After listening to the Labour Party, none of them, they're all shallow. They don't have any in-depth knowledge of anything. They've never run a business. Angela Rayner is the worst. She sounds like a schoolgirl. She's got no knowledge like that lady has that you've just had on. And this is the problem. We've got a panel of clowns running the country. It's an absolute disgrace. Thanks, Mike. Bye.
It really is an absolute disgrace. It is completely and utterly ridiculous, and you're quite right, Shirley. Thank you very much indeed for telling us that particular message. Angela Rayner not fixing the bins. You know, they've now got some coal up in Scunthorpe, I suppose. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here. Very good morning,
Good morning, yes.
I did a story this morning. A lot of people picked up on it. 2 in 3 young women won't take their husband's name.